If you're ever speaking to me like that again, better be wearing a cup.
Baby steps.
One break, I'm in
Okay, friends, let's everybody take your positions, please. Here we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, rolling. Dave!
And
Dave!
Unchained.
welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast. I'm Dave.
And I'm Dave.
We are at episode 76, Dave, and we are fully into the spring. And you know what this means?
What does it mean, Dave?
Unbelievable. Every year.
Oh, our anniversary.
Oh, it's our anniversary. That's right. It's our 6th anniversary. So if you can believe, we're around for 6 years now. So it's a cause of celebration. Now, what do you have to say for yourself after 6 years, Dave?
Can't believe we made it this far.
Man, a few words.
That's it.
Okay, well, we're going to skip all the pomp and circumstance because obviously Dave doesn't have much to say.
Here's to another 6 years.
Here's to another 6 years. And with that, we're going to go right into Van Halen news.
Van Halen.
News! Well, we're going to start off on a somber note, unfortunately. Obviously, never like to do that, but this is too important not to talk about. It has appeared that Noel Monk has passed, who was Van Halen's manager from 1978 to 1985. Noel was a guest on our show 3 times. He originally came on to promote his book, Running with the Devil, in June of 2017, which is early on in the podcast. That was episode number 15. Then he came on in February of 2018, where we were talking about the anniversary of Van Halen 1. And we talked about the tour from 1978 that he was running at that time. And we did a whole detailed interview with him then. That was episode number 26. And then Noel came on for his final time in September of 2018 for his Noel Monk auction, which was episode number 33. And Dave and I have always had an amazing time with Noel. He was one of the most extraordinary characters I've ever interviewed. Crazy, funny, straight up, very forward and honest, which Dave and I really greatly appreciated. He was a salty guy with a lot of charisma, just an old school rock and roll manager who went to great lengths to get the job done. And he really took care of the Van Halen band hardcore, for sure. We want to thank him for that and for his book, which is Running with the Devil, a backstage pass to the wild times, loud rock, and the down and dirt truth behind the making of Van Halen, which is definitely required reading for this podcast. We want to thank Noel for all his time, his wisdom, and the fun he gave us. Dave and I had a blast with him all the time. He's literally one of our all-time favorite guests. Dave, what did you have to say about Noel?
Oh, man, what? That guy always made us laugh. I mean, how many times have we said on the podcast, one of his infamous quotes, sober up?
Yeah.
Right? That comes from Noel. He was very direct. He always used to say, I'm paraphrasing, but it's like, I was there, I know, so... that's one of the reasons why he wrote the book. Although we would always challenge him on certain things that his memory was suspect on. So he was always very adamant in his position. We always used to say this about my grandmother, Dave. Noel was always right, and he would never give you any reason to believe otherwise.
Exactly.
Right? So that was Noel. And yeah, his passing came out of nowhere. I remember, some guy on the links was like, he went to a house where there was an auction, and it turned out it was Noel's house and his stuff. And, this guy was a Van Halen fan. And he was like, I didn't even know that Noel had passed away. And it turned out Noel had passed away. I'm still not sure when Noel passed away.
Well, the rumor is that he passed in January.
That's one rumor, and then there was another rumor that it happened later than that.
Okay.
So, there hasn't been any official announcement.
Or obit. There's no obit.
Yeah, there's no official obituary.
Right.
Dave and I aren't, out there to promote rumors or anything. So
No.
He's definitely passed, when it's a moot point now. It doesn't matter.
It's a mystery like Noel himself.
Yeah, that's true. But, sadly, another person of the fantastic Van Halen history has left us.
Absolutely. And what a piece of legacy he was. If you read the book, and it really is required reading, and like Dave said, we challenged Noel on some of his memory of some stuff, but he really went through it with those guys. I mean, he was literally side by side from 78 to 85. Now, you can't be more in the trenches than Noel with those guys. I mean, right. I tell you one thing, and he's pretty honest about this. He was not involved in the records. He'll tell you that. He was not there for the records. That's Don Landy and Ted Templeman, for sure. But the guy on the other side of things, in terms of the touring and the merchandise and all that, was Noel 24/7. And one of the things that he really did for Van Halen was he really set them up early on with merchandising. He took care of those guys, and you can't believe the way he set them up. I mean, you have to realize the way merchandising is today, it was not like that back in the day. You did not see a lot of hardcore merch, and he set up an entire company and a system and everything that really escalated that in the early infancy of merchandising. So, Van Halen has a lot to thank for Noel Monk, and don't get me wrong, he was rough around the edges. He had his way of doing things. But
he was definitely a polarizing figure.
Oh, yeah.
Even to this day, some people take issue with some of the things that he wrote in the book because, like you said, he was rough around the edges. So there were some people he definitely did not make friends with in the industry because of that. Because he was definitely not your typical manager.
Oh, no. Not typical.
Which I think is why Van Halen picked him.
He wasn't your typical anything. He was just a unique dude. He definitely walked it like he talked it. So, that's for sure. We put together a special tribute for Noel because Dave and I had such a good time with him on the air. So we wanted to put out this little highlight reel that we wanted to share for you guys, for you to enjoy. This is our tribute to our buddy Noel.
My feeling was after 85, it was no longer Van Halen. It was Van Hagar or Van Sharon or whoever they put in there. And people don't agree with me, but without David and Edward, there was no Van Halen. So from day one, I thought they were one of the best bands I had ever seen. And I go back to pouring Southern Comfort for Janis Joplin at the Fillmore East in 68. I have seen and worked for just about every band except, I think, Elvis and the Beatles. You cannot replace a David Roth and you can't replace an Edward Van Halen. And you take one of them away, you don't have it. I always felt if they had been able to keep it together, which I think my book explained why they couldn't, they would have had another 5 or 10 years of being a monster band. We were just coming into our own in 84. Sober up. I don't know why Michael, straight out, took the shit he took. In my book, I tell you what they did to him and what I would have advised him to do. When they made him a sideman in 84 and did really a dastardly thing. It sounds a little Sherlock Holmes, but it was just an evil thing. And he put up with it, and I just don't understand why. And he always did. He never defended himself. Ed, Al, and Dave always came to me with their problems. Okay? Pretty much equally, except Dave and Edward more. I think Edward called me a puppet. I was no one's fucking puppet. Sober up. If I came into the office, you didn't know whether Dave would appear. The one day being totally brilliant and incisive and creative, or a complete jerk. And that was always scary, because when you're dealing with the public, you have to basically shut them up. It's a schizophrenic type of situation. One day he can be the nicest, smartest guy in the world, and the next day he can be a horror. A lot of my book is about David's schizophrenia. Not like we're not all like that,
Right.
but he was unpredictable. Sober up. I begged him. Just take half a point. No, I love Michael. Fuck me, love Michael, but take some money. Sober up. I have the document of Michael signing away his rights. That one really upset me. If they could do that to him, they could cut off my left arm. Sober up.
When Roth went solo, did you have any inkling to maybe call him up and try to manage Dave on his own, or had you had enough at that point?
Do I sound stupid to you?
So now, the big news that has come out of the Van Halen camp, this is unbelievable. This is something that just fell out of the sky. So Jason Newsted, the former bassist for Metallica, was doing an interview with the Palm Beach Post, and somehow he offhandedly made a comment that Alex Van Halen and Joe Satriani had approached him to partake in some sort of Van Halen tour. It's sort of a little murky because he's not really clear about everything, whether it would be under the Van Halen name or it'd be like a simple Van Halen tribute of some kind. But it went so far that Newsted apparently traveled to California to jam with Van Halen and Satriani. So now, apparently, he felt like he couldn't do the legacy justice. And this came from Newsted. He said, "How could you? There's nobody that can top it. So how do you show it honor? I didn't want it to be viewed as a money grab." And then it just all kind of fizzled. So Jason, while doing an interview for his band, the Chop House Band, this came out of nowhere. And then everybody screeched on the brakes and was screaming, "What the fuck?" Because it was like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, I mean, it was just like, that just sounded absolutely preposterous, right?
Right. It was like, wait, what? Wait, go back there for a second. What'd you say?
Like, is he dreaming this? Like, I mean,
Did he say he actually jammed with them? Did he make it that far?
This is what it said in what I read, that according to the Palm Beach Post, it said here, but discussions reportedly went far enough that Newsted traveled to California to jam with Van Halen and Satriani. That is crazy. So now this gets even stranger, okay, as time goes on. So now, this whole time when this happened, I'm thinking, now, Joe Satriani just released an album, okay? Not only did he release an album, but he announced a tour, all of which is going through the entire year of 2022, and he's already talking about doing a G3 tour in 2023.
Yeah, he's got some European dates.
He's booked out the waz. I mean, he's crazy booked. And the funny thing is Joe dropped an album right as the pandemic happened. So like April of 2020, he released an album, which was called Shapeshifting. And he did an entire promotion for that, but then the pandemic happened and the whole tour got flushed. So he went and made another album called The Elephants of Mars. Fantastic record, just came out. And then announced a monstrous tour. And then on top of doing a monstrous tour, was doing some press and was talking about possibly redoing G3 next year. And Steve Vai has released an album, and he's doing a tour this year. And he was talking about maybe joining up with Joe on G3 next year. Like, these guys are busy. They're booked. They got lots of stuff on the roster. So it almost sounded fake, right? So like, it's almost like, wait a minute, what the hell? How could that even be? Because no one's heard a peep from Alex, right? And Satriani is completely in his own solo mode right now. So I'm like, what is he talking about? This is insane. And then I started thinking, like, Satriani's out doing press right now. And he's doing all this press for his album. And I'm like, I wonder if somehow in this press, this is going to come out. Like, is someone going to ask him about this? Is he even going to address it?
Well, funny you should mention it.
Funny you should mention it, because he actually did. So Joe was doing an interview with Rock of Nations with Dave Kitchen. It's like a classic rock show. And he said, I've been talking with Alex and Dave for about a year about doing something, a tour, something like that. That was going to be a true tribute to Eddie Van Halen, obviously, and the Van Halen legacy. For me, it was a terrifying prospect of doing something like that, but I realized that it was something that would be a real labor of love for me. I was just so honored to take on the challenge. It's very complicated, Satriani said, and all I can really say about it is that if it does happen, I know we'll make it the greatest thing ever for the fans, and we'll all celebrate together, not only the great Eddie Van Halen, but the legacy that the band created, the amazing amount of music, and the goodwill and good vibes they created as a band. So now, when they asked him about Jason's comments, he was shocked that Jason said anything. He says, these things are always happening in the music industry, and you're supposed to keep very quiet about it because sometimes they don't work out. There's usually about 10 crazy ideas that float around, and musicians are always like, okay, I won't say anything about this because it may not work out. I don't want to hurt this person's feelings or disrupt any other business plans. So yeah, we were all pretty shocked that Jason wanted to go public with it because we were all sworn to silence. So this gets even crazier. Then he said, I have to say that just getting to know Alex has been really wonderful. He's a great human being, and obviously I can't imagine losing a brother that way so soon. They were really close, and their relationship was quite unique. Now, when asked about Roth, Satriani said, I don't know Dave that well. I think I only met him once, maybe when Steve Vai invited us to see the David Lee Roth tour. I was in Australia with Mick Jagger at the time, so we all went, and it was quite an experience. But yeah, I've only spoken to Dave on the phone a number of times over the last, 25 years or so, but he's David Lee Roth, they're Van Halen, and it's a big deal. And he said, like I said before, if it ever does happen, it will be a great honor and a terrifying challenge. Eddie, you can't reproduce what he did. You can't. You can learn the notes, and you can be taught all the fingerings and get the gear and everything, but there's only one Eddie, and he was the epitome of an original genius. But if it does happen, I know that Alex will make sure it's the right way to do it. Then he also said, but the thought of representing all the eras of Van Halen, that's pretty daunting. That's a lot of stuff. And just from a guitar player's point of view, Eddie progressed remarkably as a player and as an inventor, and those two things, they kind of went together from Van Halen 1 all the way to the last album. And when you sit down to actually learn it and pull it off, you go, wow, not only do I need talent, but I need to use specific gear, because certain things won't work unless you've got this amp and it's doing that. So that's also another thing. So this got really, really crazy. And I tell you, the thing that I'm so blown away by this, and the more and more I kept thinking about this, like, why would anybody do this? It sounds a little strange. But what I think, Dave, is, and I'll get your take, but this is mine, I have a feeling that since the Circle has amped up their Van Halen presence, and they started like almost owning the whole Van Halen thing. I mean, for Christ's sake, they're even doing Roth songs in their set now, and half the set list, if not more, is Van Halen. I'm wondering if Dave and Alex are getting a little itchy, because they're like, wait a minute. Now you're going to be Van Halen out there touring and getting all the goodwill and all the... No. So I'm wondering if there's a little bit of that. And I thought Joe was sort of a weird choice. Not because he's not a great guitar player. Joe is hands down one of my all-time favorites, right behind Ed. But he is a totally different player than Eddie Van Halen. I mean, he's...
No, he's not.
Well,
no, he's not.
I think he is.
No, come on. You make it sound like he's some Spanish acoustic flamenco
dude,
that they've asked to do it.
He doesn't have... Listen to me. He is an unbelievable player, but he's very much his own brand. He's very much his own brand. It
is no stranger than when Steve Vai was playing with David Lee Roth and doing Van Halen.
It's not the same thing. Let me tell you why. Because when Steve Vai, and when I interviewed him on the last episode, Steve even said, I did those songs, but I played them as Steve Vai. I didn't play them as Eddie Van Halen. Like he goes, I didn't even do what Eddie did. Obviously, he stuck within the notes of the song because he has to do that. But he very much sounded very different from Eddie. He was not imitating Eddie. So I don't know.
Maybe Joe will do the same thing.
Well, I don't know.
But
I want to say something here. I'm wondering if there's a little comment that says it here that I'm wondering if it's kind of moving beyond Joe at this point, because he says, but if it does happen, I know that Alex will make sure it's the right way to do it. Almost like Joe seems almost like separating himself, because, I mean, we already know his schedule. His schedule is full. So if it's going to happen, it's not happening anytime soon, and they might have to get another guitar player or something, because Joe is literally packed with Joe Satriani work. I mean, he is doing a full-blown tour on both sides of the world, because Joe's international, and he's going full guns with this album, and even talking about doing G3 next year. So,
well, sure, because first of all, Joe has a phenomenal work ethic.
Oh, yeah.
Number one. Number two, he literally cannot afford to sit around and wait for Van Halen or whatever they're going to call it. He's not going to sit around and wait for Al and Dave to get their crap together, because it'll be a year or two, and Joe already missed a tour. In 2000 when that album came out. Like every other artist, like they're itching to go out there and make some money. And Al and Dave can't expect Joe or anybody for that matter to be like, oh yeah, well look, we got to figure stuff out and go back and forth, and
forget
Dave
it.
and I got to fight about certain things. And Joe's like, look, I can't wait like a year for you guys, to figure things out. Like, I got a new album,
right?
I'm touring. When you guys get your stuff together, you let me know, and I'll let you know when I'm available. But I'm not putting my whole life on hold waiting for you guys to come around.
Yeah, and I really thought that. And then I'm thinking also, how odd is it that they picked Joe, considering that Joe is directly attached to Sam and Mike?
Oh, for sure. Right.
It's a little creepy.
Well, I wouldn't say creepy, but I would say, the assumption was that Ed, God rest his soul, and Al, to this day, really have no love for Sam. So the fact that they went with Joe, who, played in a band with Sam, is apparently still on at least, talking terms, on good terms with Sam. The fact they even go to him, because doesn't this make this awkward for Joe if Sam isn't invited out on this tour?
Oh, he's definitely
right now,
not.
If Sam had no clue this is going on, he's calling Joe.
Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Right?
Yeah.
And then the other, and of course the other thing, the other 800-pound gorilla in the room is, what about Mike?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, Sam and Mike are attached at the hip. I don't think either one of them is involved with this or considered at all. In fact, I think the whole reason...
Again, that makes it awkward for Joe. Joe's played in a band with both of them.
Exactly.
And it just seems awkward that Al and Dave, maybe whomever, are like looking for other bass players. And as a fan, you're sitting there going, all right, let me get this straight. You guys are doing a tribute to Ed, and you're still carrying this grudge towards Mike.
It's unbelievable.
So much so
that
you're looking for another bass player. Now, should it be Mike? Sure. Should it be Wolf? Sure. Is Wolf going to do it?
No.
He's really focusing on his solo career. I don't think he wants to be in let's call this what it is. It's basically a Van Halen tribute band.
Right.
And he's really not interested in that right now.
Right.
And really, who can blame him? He's got his own thing going on.
No, he shouldn't do it.
Maybe he'll show up for a guest appearance somewhere or something like that.
Right.
Whatever. So, yeah. And we still haven't gotten to one of the best parts of the story yet.
So now we're going to get to this part. This is the best. So, of course, we've heard from Jason Newsted. We've heard from Joe Satriani. Now, of course, the creme de la creme comes here. The Van Halen news desk reached out to David Lee Roth to get a comment, and David Lee Roth awakes from his slumber to release this statement. In my mind, Van Halen 4K in the age of COVID is going to require two of us for every position. Satriani and Lukather, Anthony and Newsted, Al or Tommy Lee. Perhaps the only one who could do my job today would be Pink. Now, here's the funny part about this whole thing. First of all, Van Halen 4K is the version with Wolf. That is the fourth version of Van Halen. The first version is the original four. The second is Van Halen with Sam. The third is with Gary. The fourth is with Wolf in place of Michael Anthony. So this would actually be the fifth version of Van Halen if, in fact, they were going to call it Van Halen, which I think would be a mistake without Eddie. They'd have to come up with some sort of terminology or something, number one. Number two, if you're really going to do this, you should definitely do it with Dave and Sam, with Mike on bass, with Al on drums, and then maybe have a host of guitarists in a rotating position. It would be cool if they had, people like Zach Wilde, John Five, Dweezil Zappa, Nuno Bettencourt, people who are hardcore Eddie Van Halen enthusiasts, like to the core. Eddie is their god, okay? Dimebag Darrell would be one too, but he's not alive, of course. So anyway, those guys would be perfect for this. It's just interesting that they pick Satriani, someone so close to both Hagar and Michael Anthony. That, I wonder, is if it's a little bit of a Will Smith smack in the face over there. I have no idea. Then I'm wondering, Joe's not a malicious guy. He's like the nicest guy ever. But I'm wondering if he was like a little annoyed by the way Chickenfoot ended. And he was kind of like, if Al wants me to play with him and Dave, I'll play with him and Dave. But I think Joe is definitely there more for the experience. I'm actually surprised, to be honest, that he would even entertain this, because he really has his own world going on. Joe Satriani has his own career, his own catalog, his own world. He's been doing this. It's got to be 35 years he has a career. So he has his own thing going on. Maybe it was a fun thing. Like, hey, listen, Joe joined Deep Purple for a while. He was in that band. Joe went on tour with Mick Jagger in Australia and the other side of the world. I think he might have gone to Japan or something like that. So he does like to do jaunts sometime. Maybe this is not a long-term thing. Maybe this was a short-term thing. Who knows? But it's interesting that there is some legitimacy here. Now, the interesting thing about Roth's statement is he sort of is joking around because, I think he's trying to be funny by saying the only person who could do my job today would be Pink, because she's obviously a charismatic, wild, unique singer type of thing. I think he's being cutesy with his comment. I also think he's wrong in calling it Van Halen 4K, which is so strange, considering he was in the fourth version of Van Halen. I don't know why he's not doing his math right. But Steve Lukather is not exactly, he's close with Ed. Super close to Ed, good friend, but they don't play anything like each other. I don't know. Jason Newsted, I didn't think was a fit. Tommy Lee, oh my God. I don't know. I think Roth's statement was a flippant, kind of colorful, Bozy Bop statement from Dave, to be honest with you. What do you think?
Well, those are always Dave's statements.
Yeah.
When I was reading people's commentary online, more than one person had said, if you understand Dave and you read between the lines, they believe that Dave wanted Lukather and Michael Anthony, and Al wanted Jason and Joe Satriani.
Interesting.
Right. And the Tommy Lee thing was just,
a joke.
Dave being Dave, because Al's going to be there.
Well, of course.
Right. And the Pink thing is, whatever. So more than one person made that observation. And I was like,
That is a really good perception, I think. Yeah. But Steve Lukather is interesting. He certainly has, amazing chops. He's an incredible guitarist, but it's just funny because he's just a different sort of style. But I don't know, man. This makes me wonder, if this got out, is this now something that was going to happen and has now fizzled? Because the fact that it got out makes me think it's already dead. What do you think?
Yeah, I wonder because, well, Joe was put between a rock and a hard place, right?
Yeah.
Because now it's the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
He gets asked the question. Now, what is he supposed to say? Sorry, I really can't talk about that. Next question.
Exactly.
It puts him in a really awkward position. Now, him and Jason, they're not like David Lee Roth, right? Because the Van Halen brothers always had Dave on a short leash. Listen, don't say anything, Dave, because if you do, we're not going to tour with you.
Right.
Right? So, like, Joe's a nice guy, but really, Joe don't care. You know, Joe's like, all right, well, whatever. Then I got lots of solo gigs, and Jason obviously just doesn't give a flying.
Well, yeah, I don't think Jason gives a fuck at all. But the funny thing is that it was sort of safe for Joe to comment because it was already out of the bag. And to be honest with you, what does this do, Dave? It only gives Joe more press for his album. So,
That's
I mean,
true.
you know, and
That's
his
true.
tour and this and that. But even before this happened, I was looking at his schedule and I was like, wow, he is really going for it on this promotional tour and on this album and stuff. He's already talking about booking 2023. That's great. And I think that's wonderful. But then when this came out, I said, oh, this must be in the clear rear view for him to be this bold and be commenting on it like this. And also, he has the leeway that Jason already spilled the beans. So it must be that him and Jason are definitely out of it. Well, now it's almost like I can see Al almost dropping the whole thing, not commenting on it, and moving forward. But obviously, there's legitimacy to it. And you know what, Dave? This also does tie in to why Dave kept saying he was talking to Alex every day. So that is a piece of the puzzle. You know, we thought that was a figment of his imagination. We kept thinking Alex was like Mr. Snuffleupagus that he keeps thinking coming in and out. I mean, honest to God.
Right.
So I think he was being honest when he said that because he was probably talking to Alex every day because they were cooking something up. But I really believe that it has to do with the position that the Circle has taken. Both Mike and Sam are out there grabbing, raising, and waving the Van Halen flag, whereas Dave and Al are like, if anybody is going to raise the fucking Van Halen flag, it's going to be us, because we're fucking Van Halen. So I think there's that, and then Wolf is like, you know what, you guys, do whatever you want, I'm going left, meaning like, he wants nothing to do with this.
Yeah. I think there's some truth to what you say, Dave.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, Sam has always been the one who's played live. I mean, he's not like Joe Satriani and like doing full-scale tours and stuff, but you could always count on him to be doing a certain amount of shows a year. You know, maybe he was coming to your town, maybe he wasn't, but he'd probably be there in a year or two. And really, who else is doing it now?
Right.
You know, Al never played with anybody but his brother.
Right.
So he's not doing anything. Dave can never seem to, like, get shows done without COVID interfering with him.
Right.
He has, like, the worst timing and the worst luck with that. Sammy seems to have better luck with it, I guess. But honestly, I mean, I think they're putting it together as a tribute to Ed. I think that's really at the core of what's happening.
Possibly.
Are they also thinking, we really don't want Sam and Mike to be representing the band?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they probably are. But guess what? They're the ones out there playing and touring.
I know.
So it's really very, very simple. If that bothers you, then go out and play and tour.
Well, I tell you what they should get. If you're going to get a bassist, I think they should get Billy Sheehan. Billy Sheehan would be the guy to get, and I would also get someone on guitar like Dweezil. Dweezil would be perfect. Are you kidding me?
I've seen his name tossed around too. I just think Joe has better name recognition.
Of course he does. But Joe has a massive career of his own. Joe has fans all over the world. He is renowned in his field as one of the greats. And he has his own music and his own band and his own career and his own tours and his own merch and his own everything. He's a brand in and of himself. So the way I read this is Joe was definitely approached and involved, but I think, like you said, he's moved on and he's definitely commenting on it in the rear view. Now, is Sam going to be involved? You know Sam would be the first one on the doorstep of Al's house. if they wanted him. Oh, and let me tell you something. He'd bring Mike with him. That is the way he is. But I don't think Dave would ever share a stage with Sam, ever. Okay, the guy wouldn't sing a song with the guy on stage when he was on tour with him. I do not think he would ever do something like this. That's number one. The other thing is, I'm wondering if this is tying in to why Dave's retirement shows are not happening. I'm wondering if that's the reason behind that.
Could be.
Let's put that on hold. The whole thing is a little odd. All of a sudden, it doesn't sound like he's retiring. He has not even talked about it again. There's that. Now, here's the other thing. I don't think Wolf would be involved with this at all. I think he's got his own thing happening. But let's be honest. If promoters were going to put this on tour, they would want Dave and Sam and Mike and Al all together. Believe you me, they would. And I wouldn't be surprised, Dave, if even Gary was in the mix. I don't know if Dave would...
No, I'm not holding my... Please.
Well,
please.
I tell you what... wait a minute.
Please.
Wait a minute. I'll tell you what he could do. He could sing the Hagar material. That's for sure. That's getting in the Hagar material without Hagar.
Maybe. I don't know what they're thinking. My head hurts just...
All right. Let's wrap this up by saying, because you're the accountant, what are the chances you think anything comes out of this?
I think there's a chance something comes out of it. Like maybe they'll do a tribute show.
Okay.
Or like a really short run. Like a week or two of shows.
Okay.
Something like that. Because let's say Joe actually does this, right? You know, they say, look, Joe, we're going to do this for 2 weeks.
Right. Maybe they find a window.
Okay, I need a couple of months to prepare. We'll tour for a couple of weeks. That I can do. I can see that happening. I'd say something happening. I'll give it probably like 50-50 odds. But I don't know. These guys, they're like their biggest enemy.
They're
the
all
enemy
worse.
is in
They're
the
all
mirror.
worse.
They're always tripping over themselves. They can't internally agree on stuff. It sounds like they're really trying to get big names. And I don't blame them because that's really the way to go. Because I know Sam, I remember years ago, he was like trying to do like a tribute to his career. And he was trying to get a super band together. And that like kind of sort of eventually morphed into the Circle. Sam never really got a name brand guitarist. He got Mikey on bass.
Right.
Bass player for Van Halen. He got Jason Bonham on the drums.
Right.
You know, who's known, and he's, for better or for worse, he's known as John Bonham's son. Like, there's some name recognition there, right? But he never really got, for whatever reason, he never got a name brand guitarist. Now, I'm not knocking Vic as a player. He's great as a player, and he's lasted longer with Sam than any other guitarist.
That's right.
But, like, in terms of name recognition, like, his name is going to be the least recognizable in the band. So Sam really never quite got that right. And I think Van Halen is definitely trying to get that right.
Oh, yeah.
Or, when I say Van Halen, I mean Al and Dave.
Well, if you're going to get an A-list guitarist for that slot, I mean, Satriani is an A-list guitarist. So maybe that's their thinking. It was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought Newsted was such a strange choice. Love Jason Newsted, but my God, he's a metal thrash player. He's not rock and roll. I thought that was a little out of the ordinary, but maybe because he is a good player, he's good energy on stage, and he had the task of filling in big shoes, so he was used to playing in a big band, and he was used to filling in some big shoes with Cliff Burton and Metallica, so I don't know if that's what they were thinking, but I tell you, it's just the way this all unraveled and came out, and how secretive Van Halen is, and the way this kind of fell out there, and Jason opening up, and then Satriani on a press tour, and then he starts talking about it. Oh my God, Al must be mortified that all of this is happening, because this is probably his own worst nightmare.
Right.
That's true.
Well, let's see what happens.
We will.
I'm not holding my breath, though.
Exactly. Well, unfortunately, we have another death that has happened, and that is the passing of Taylor Hawkins, the drummer for the Foo Fighters. Taylor was 50 years old. He died in his hotel room in Casa Meda in Bogota on the 25th of March. This was right before the Foos were going to perform. They were scheduled to perform at the Picnic Stereo Festival at Bogota. They had already played Lollapalooza Chile, and Lollapalooza Argentina, and they were scheduled to headline Lollapalooza Brazil later in the weekend. But unfortunately, Taylor's basically, I guess, what would you consider, Dave? He's overdosed, right? I mean, that's what he did. They found substances in his body, 10 different types, including marijuana, antidepressants, opioids, and benzodiazepine. You know how to say that, Dave? Is that how you said it? I don't know.
I don't know how to say that.
It's a very complicated drug. And they also found beer and vodka and stuff, unfortunately, and he passed away, which is just tragic. And I can only imagine Dave Grohl, after going through this with Kurt, to go through this with Taylor, and those two were so close. It's brutal. And Hawkins left behind his wife, Allison, his 3 children, Oliver, Shane, Annabelle, and Everly. So very, very sad day for that. The reason I bring that up here, not only because of the rock community, but Taylor was a monstrous Van Halen fan, loved Van Halen. In fact, he had a side band called Chevy Metal, and he used to do Van Halen covers in his side band all the time, and here's a clip of that.
See you driving up and down my road. I tell you, honey, you're the prettiest girl I know. For sure. Better use it up before we get sold. I tell you, honey, now you let your life go. No, I've been begging, begging on my hands and knees. I can't wait to feel your love tonight. I can't wait to feel your love tonight. I can't wait to feel your love tonight. I can't wait to feel your love.
Now, of course, he was friends with Wolf, and Wolf went out on social media and he said the following: "I'll never forget meeting Taylor on tour in San Diego in 2012. He was such a ridiculously kind man. The dude just emanated cool. Him, my pops, and I talked for as long as we could until we had to leave. An incredible drummer and singer, and he was a constant inspiration to me throughout my entire life. This is like a kick in the gut. The most heartfelt condolences go out to his family. You will be sorely missed, Taylor. Rest in peace." So that was a kind word from Wolf. And on top of that, when Wolf was playing with Mammoth WVH, what he did was, after Taylor's passing, the next gig he had, which was the Saturday, he was in Boston. And you know how we talked about in the last cast, he's been thrown in a cover in the set of Them Bones from Alice in Chains. And he switched that cover out to be the Foo Fighters' My Hero. And what he said at the time was that Taylor was a hero to him, and he was a hero to all of us, and a hero to countless people, so we felt this was necessary. He was an incredible drummer and singer. And then he played the song, and here's a clip of that. So what do you make of all this, Dave? This was just a brutal announcement of another celebrity death.
Yeah, very sad. I mean, like you said, he was really tight with Dave, and he had a history before, and it was just sad that he could not beat his demons. Talented guy, well-liked guy.
Oh, yeah, real beloved, yeah.
You never heard anybody say anything bad about him. Just such a waste.
Yeah. It's funny. He always was wearing the Eddie Van Halen surfer shorts with the stripes. He used to have pictures of Dave on his drum head. I mean, he was a hardcore Van Halen fan. Always wearing Van Halen t-shirts. Always talking about VH. Just totally loved Van Halen. So he was a hardcore Van Halen fan all the time. Our heartfelt condolences go out to Dave, of course, and the guys and all his family. And so I have a question for you, Dave. Do the Foo Fighters go on, or do you think that's the end of the Foo Fighters?
Ooh. Well, they canceled their tour, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was going to go to see them at Citi Field. Unfortunately, that whole thing is gone.
I think they go on.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they go on.
Yeah.
If it had been anybody else in the band, I would say they're definitely going to go on.
Yeah.
And I'm not downplaying anybody else's contribution to the band. But him and Taylor were just tight.
Yeah, super
right?
tight.
I mean, they were just really tight. I think he was the tightest person in the band. I mean, maybe it was, what's his name? The guitarist who also played with Dave.
Pat Smear. Pat Smear.
Yeah, Pat Smear, right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, they were close because they were played in Nirvana together, yeah.
Right. Played in Nirvana together,
Yeah.
so maybe he's known him longer. But I don't know. I think they go on.
Believe it or not, Taylor also drummed for Alanis Morissette and also drummed for Sass Jordan, who was one of our former guests here. So just a ball of energy behind that kid and just an amazing drummer and just so sad. And like Dave said, just a waste. You know, I hate to see anybody, go by drugs and to die that way. So it's just really, really sad. But now, speaking of the Foo Fighters, now we all know that the Grammys were happening, and who was against the Foo Fighters for Best Rock Song? Of course, it was Mammoth WVH, Wolf himself. So this was so sad. So I watched the Grammys. They don't even televise the award. Now, listen to what I just said. On the award is Foo Fighters, Mammoth WVH, Paul McCartney, Kings of Leon, and Weezer. These are all well-known bands. This is Best Rock Song. And they don't even televise that. All of the rock stuff is completely wiped clean off of the program. And Eddie Trunk went on and on about this. He goes on a rant, forget about it, about the Grammys. But wow. I mean, Dave, it wasn't even televised. I mean, think about the people who are in this category. It's amazing. So anyway, the Foo Fighters won. In fact, they were up for 3 Grammys and won all of them. They won for Best Rock Performance for the recording of Make a Fire. They won, of course, like I said, for Best Rock Song for Waiting on a War. That was the one they were up against Mammoth WVH, who was up for Distance. And they also won Best Rock Album for Medicine at Midnight. So they cleaned up at the awards. Obviously, they weren't there. They had pulled out of the ceremony because of the death of Taylor, and they pulled out of their tour. I mean, just a sad time, too. I mean, here's these guys are on the top of their game with this huge sold-out tour, and they had all these Grammys, and they couldn't even enjoy it because of the death of Taylor. So just really, really sad, very pathetically sad. And, what are you going to do? That's how it all went down. But what do you make of this, Dave?
Well, going back to what you said about the Rock Awards not even being presented on the Grammys anymore, I mean, that's where we are right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sad state of affairs when Paul McCartney is one of the nominees, and apparently that's not good enough to televise.
It's amazing. It's so sad because, and you know what happens when they don't televise it? Because they know when it's not going to be televised. They don't even show up. I mean, it's like, what is going on? So it was just kind of sad. I will say, Wolf did win an award. He received the iHeart Award for Best New Rock Artist at the iHeart Radio Music Awards, which was aired on Fox. So that's kind of interesting, you know what I'm saying? So that occurred. Now, I also wanted to talk about some of the press that Wolf had done on the Grammy red carpet. And he was there with not only his girlfriend, I think her name is Andrea Alslop. That's his girlfriend. She looked beautiful. And then his mom, Valerie, was there. So they were all celebrating the moment. They were on the red carpet, doing press together. And basically, Wolf expressed his gratitude just for the nomination. He said it made him feel close to his dad, Eddie Van Halen, of course. He said, even though he lost, he said, we came, we saw, but we did not conquer, and that's okay. He said on Instagram, I got to have a wonderful night with the 2 most important women in the world. He said it was such an honor to be nominated for the first song I ever released on my own in a category with artists I looked up to my whole life. I don't even know if I'll ever fully let that set in, which is incredible. And he said the loss meant that he was following in his father's footsteps because he considered that Eddie lost his first Grammy nod in 1985. And he said Pop didn't win the first time he was nominated too, so it looks like I'm following in his footsteps quite nicely. He also said that who knows what the future holds. All I know is I'm feeling pretty damn grateful. What a wild experience this was. Thank you to the Recording Academy for the recognition, and thank you for the support. You all mean the world to me. So he was very excited just to be nominated, and I really do believe he was very honest about that. That was really kind of cool. Valerie got into the picture here, and she started talking. She said, there's only one other person that would be prouder than me, and that's pretty impossible, but it would be Ed. I feel him so strongly right now. I feel he's here with us. Wolf addressed his dad Everything I do in music is for him, so I just do the best I can and make sure I try to make him proud in everything I do. So that was nice. And also, Wolf did an interview with Access TV, with both Val and him on the red carpet there. Wolf said, I never could imagine any of this would happen. This is sort of an out-of-body experience and not something I'm used to in any way. That's why I had to make sure my mom and my girlfriend were here with me for support. And Val said, I couldn't be any prouder of him. I've been proud of him since he was born, and he's just never let me down. He's always been an amazing human being. He's grown up to be an amazing young man in spite of me and his father. He's done all this on his own. And now Eddie Van Halen was nominated for his first Grammy when he was 30 for Jump, and he didn't win, just like the same thing with Wolf, except Wolf is 31. Val said Ed would have loved this, and he would have really enjoyed Wolf getting nominated. And Wolf said, I can't believe I'm in a category with a Beatle and Dave Grohl for a song. I mean, come on, that's absolutely ridiculous. A nice little nod to Ed also was that Wolf was wearing a very special necklace. And what he was doing, he was wearing this heart necklace, and it had his father's thumb imprint on it and his father's birthstone. And so he wore that around his neck for good luck. And he also made mention that he notices little things about himself on stage that he does like his dad. He said, there are little moments where I do something and then I realize, oh my God, my dad used to do that on stage all the time. And then he realizes that he moved a certain way or smiled a certain way. And he says, oh my God, he would do the same exact thing. He says, I can't even control it. It just happens, which is pretty funny. So that was sort of a nice moment. Dave, what did you make of this whole Valerie on the red carpet with Wolf, and what did you make of it?
Well, I thought the necklace he wore was cool with the fingerprint. I thought that was really cool. I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that Val was out there on the red carpet. Because I know she's proud of her son.
Yeah.
I also know she can't resist a moment in the sun with her son.
I mean, I think it's fine to go.
But you know, it's like, how many rock stars are going with their mom?
No, I
got to hand it to Wolf. You know, he's pretty tight with his mom.
Yeah.
And like he said, you know, bringing my two favorite women with me, which is cool, right? Yeah. Your girlfriend and your mom. It's just, give the guy some space.
Or maybe just let him do the press on his own. Maybe go and support, but maybe just let him do his own press. You know what I mean?
Right. Because I remember at one point she was gushing over him, and he was like, "Mom." You know,
I was ready for her to pull out a book and be like, and you can read it about in my new book. And
she's very proud of him. Right. I will say that.
Yeah, no, she is, which is great. But it would have been funny if Wolf turned around and said, "Mom, enough already," and then looked into the camera.
I know. Well, I felt like he almost did at one point, you know?
I know. It was
she was
funny.
Gushing all over him, and he was like, Mom, okay, Mom, you know. It was like...
He's like, speaking of enough already, that's the title of my new book, Enough Already. That was so funny. Now, interesting enough, he got a couple of trip-ups here. Number one, they're going to start with this. Right after I saw him, and we'll get to my report on me seeing him, but right after I saw him, he had a couple of stumbles here. Although he handled it perfectly, he basically played in New Jersey, and his guitarist, John Jordan, had to sit out. He couldn't perform because I don't know if he was sick or something like that. But
it might have been a family emergency.
Something happened, and he couldn't perform. So they had to go out as a trio. Now, remember, Frank Sidoris is one of the guitarists who he had to go on tour without because he was out with Slash, because he shares Frank with Slash's band. So now he loses John, he loses Frank. Now he's down to just him and two other guys. So, and as a result, he performed Distance as an acoustic version, and here's a clip of that.
I'm so tired. See your face. Memory of you. It fades when I go on. I'm still crying. Want this place. okay. No matter what the distance is, we'll be with you. No matter what the distance is, we'll be with you. No matter what the distance is, we'll be with you. No matter what the distance is, we'll be okay. Oh, yeah.
He said to the whole situation, he said, this is fun, this is interesting, it's dangerous. You don't know what's going to fucking happen, right? He says, I can tell you for sure, we're going to rock the fuck out, whether it's good or not. So he did his absolute best, and everybody said he did a great job holding down the fort, even though he didn't have John or Frank. So obviously, you know, Wolf are working on his feet there, so that's nice. Now, also, unfortunately, Mammoth WVH had to cancel the last 6 dates of the Young Guns tour, starting with his performance on April 5th in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Ritz. Touring personnel tested positive for COVID-19, and then it started to affect the rest of the dates, which was April 6th in Charlotte, North Carolina, April 8th in Nashville, Tennessee, April 9th in Dothan, Alabama, April 10th in Orlando, Florida, and April 12th in Orlando, Florida. So what happened was Dirty Honey still went on as scheduled, and they did the show, but Mammoth was not on the bill. Wolfgang basically explained, after an incredible weekend in Las Vegas with my family for the Grammys, I flew back yesterday to meet up with my band and crew in North Carolina to continue the Young Guns tour. This morning, as everyone took COVID tests to reestablish the bubble that had served us on the tour, we came to find out that members of our band and crew who didn't travel with me were positive, and I have tested negative via rapid and PCR tests for the last 5 days in preparation for the Grammys, and still continue to do so. With only 6 shows left on the tour, it breaks my heart that we unfortunately won't be able to continue. Mammoth WVH will do our very best to make up the dates that we missed to our fans in those markets in the near future. So, unfortunate there, huh, Dave? What do you make of that? After the tour had to be delayed, and then they had to cancel dates, and lost the Grammy, John had to leave. I mean, the poor guy.
Yeah, it was like one obstacle after the other. I got to tell you, he was a trooper, though. He kept at it, played as a trio, but I guess COVID's still a thing.
Remember, he was in a cast for a while? I mean, you know, the guy...
Yeah, it was just too bad. He had a lot of momentum going. I mean, he's got some more shows coming up, right?
Yeah, he's got some more shows coming up. That'll be happening. He's going to be doing some more supporting Hailstorm and stuff like that, which we talked about.
Right.
So that's
okay.
going to happen.
All right. Well, and maybe he'll take the opportunity to start writing and laying down some tracks for the new album.
Yeah, he's going to be playing. He starts April 29th. He starts in Tucson, Arizona. Then in May, he starts playing in Billington's, Montana, Casper, Wyoming. He plays all the way through May 21st in Maryland Heights. So, hey, listen, he's going to be touring all year long. He's just going to continue. But anyway, so I wanted to give you an update. I went to see him at Webster Hall on March 28th. Dirty Honey opened the show, and they were phenomenal. So it was a Mammoth WVH closer. Dirty Honey was a cross between really like the Black Crowes and Lynyrd Skynyrd and Aerosmith. They really had a nice mix going on. Really great show. So that was already strong, and they both played about an hour and 10 or something like that. The crowd was chanting, Wolfie, Wolfie. Everybody was all excited. They had the big Mammoth logo, which kept changing colors in the background. He seemed really happy. Like, he seemed way more engaged with the crowd. He seemed way more into the situation. He was totally, like, making eye contact with people in the crowd and, like, talking to them. So that was definitely a nice thing to see. He opened with Mammoth, went into Mr. Ed, did Epiphany, Horribly Right, You'll Be the One. Then he said, I'll bring out this keyboard so I don't have to fake this shit. Because this is a night of real rock and roll, no BS. You guys get the real shit. This might get a little sludgy. And then he went into Stone, which is that big epic song on the album, which we all love. He went and played that newer song, I Don't Know At All. And then he said, the next song is my dad's favorite. And he went into Think It Over, which, come to think of it, I cannot believe that he has not released that as a single. That is absolutely shocking to me that has not been a single. Maybe he'll release it as a single this summer. I'm not really sure.
Which one? Which song you can't believe is a single?
Think It Over.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's
that definitely
totally got single written all over it, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
so then he also played You're to Blame, Distance, which he said is still very emotional for him to perform, and he was very wide-eyed, and even though that it's been a while, it still hits home. And he changed the set from Them Bones, like I said before, to My Hero, which is the Foo Fighters cover, and dedicated to Taylor Hawkins. He said, we lost someone important. Taylor was a hero to me and other people. After my dad died, he was a champion of his legacy, and I felt the need to add this to the set list. Sing along if you know this one. And then he closed the set after doing My Hero. He did Don't Back Down, which was great. And just a really solid show. I mean, I have to honestly tell you, he really did a nice job. And to be honest with you, the pairing of Dirty Honey with Mammoth WVH was perfect. I mean, that was a really nice, solid bill. It was interesting to see. So that was really cool. And what do you make of all this, Dave?
Well, I'm sorry I didn't get to see them live. Wasn't in the cards for me this time, even though they did play Connecticut, and they added a Connecticut show when they rescheduled. But I'm glad to hear that he's got the goods live like he does in the studio. Keep it coming. He's on a roll right now, notwithstanding his most recent current touring snafu. He's doing really well, and I'm really happy for him that everything's going so well. Keep it going, man, and, don't be afraid to play as a trio, because it worked for your dad for years.
Yeah, that's true. And when he was Mammoth, right? When he was Mammoth. Now, also, he did an interview on Q104.3, and they asked him about bad habit he got into was sort of like closing his eyes when he sings. So he had to sort of force himself to make a stronger attempt at like looking out to the audience and connecting with people. And he says, I'm looking out during certain songs and seeing people sing every word. It's nuts. It's a weird feeling when it's your words and you've written it, and it's much different than any other band I've been a part of. So he's kind of digging that vibe. So you got to remember, this guy is just getting his feet wet here in running a band and fronting a band. I mean, the guy's playing keyboards, he's singing, he's playing guitar, he's doing everything. My God, he's doing everything but jumping behind the drum kit. So who knows what might be coming up? You never know. So,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So, one other thing was kind of funny. It's like a little funny thing. So Kylie Jenner and Travis Scott named their second baby Wolf Webster, and then decided to change the baby's name after announcing it. And Wolf tweeted, "Thank fuck," which was kind of funny because he didn't want to share the name with Kylie Jenner's kid. They were like, FYI, our son's name isn't Wolf anymore. We just really didn't feel like it was him. Just wanted to share because I keep seeing Wolf everywhere. Obviously, Wolf came out and spoke out on that and was very happy that he was not sharing the name with Kylie Jenner's son. That's kind of funny, right, Dave?
Yes, that's interesting, though, that people say stuff about Wolf on social media that I doesn't like. He's quick to shoot them down.
Yeah.
But he's not so quick to do that about other people, so I find that interesting.
Interesting is right. So now, one other thing that was interesting was Valerie Bertinelli appeared on Rob Lowe's podcast, literally. So Rob Lowe, the actor from The Outsiders and About Last Night and St. Elmo's Fire, that Rob Lowe, sex tape Rob Lowe, from the 80s. He has a podcast, actually very good. He does a good job. It's called Literally. And he has a lot of cool guests, and Val was on there, obviously pushing her book. So she obviously got into a little Ed talk. Surprise! So she said that after Ed and I got involved, all of a sudden there was this rule of no girlfriends or wives were allowed on the road. She said, I got along great with Al and Mike, but someone else, I don't know why, didn't like me. But what are you going to do? I don't know why he didn't like me. I was always nice to him. One day I'll have to sit down and say, dude, what did I do? Honestly, I've always been a fan of yours. I think you're a brilliant frontman and a great songwriter. I love your lyrics. Why don't you like me? What did I do? And she said, I'm a very nice person if you get to know me. So she's talking about David Lee Roth. She said she was very often labeled the Yoko of the band. And she said, I've certainly been accused of that, but Yoko didn't break up the Beatles, and I certainly didn't break up Van Halen. She's very direct, Val. No joking around with her. Talking about drugs and Ed's problems with that, she said, we all have a toolbox that we go to when we need to suppress an emotion that we don't want to feel. Ed's toolbox was filled with drugs and alcohol, and it took a very, very long time for him to not use it to deal with his pain. Near the end of his life, his pain was incredibly raw, and he was very vulnerable about it. But I'm grateful that he was able to make amends with so many of the people he loved and knew he didn't treat as well as he would have liked to. His heart was so kind and sweet. He just wanted to do good. Then that demon would come in and wouldn't let him just be Ed. It was hard to watch. So she was pretty frank there. She said, sitting back now, there are so many things I could have done differently, but I was a kid, meaning she was very young when she got married. In talking about Wolfie, she said he's very much like his dad in that his fingers are always moving. He always has a melody in his head, and he's always drumming on something. And she said, I didn't want him to be a musician. I didn't want him to be in the business because the business is so hard on people. But when you have the gift, what are you going to do? And talking about the song Beat It by Michael Jackson, Rob was referencing the song Beat It, and she goes, was that on the Bad album? I don't know how you could be an 80s icon and not know that, but that's all right, whatever.
I don't think she's good with albums. She's not super clear on Van Halen's albums.
Exactly.
Either. I just don't think that's her,
her
strong suit.
Exactly. She also said, I remember Al was so angry at Ed for playing on that song. You never should have done it. You kept our album from going #1. We never got the chance. And Ed didn't care. He just wanted to play, she said. She said her favorite video is Jump because Ed's impish grin is just so damn cute. Direct quote, by the way. She also said she likes Finish What You Started as well. Now, when Rob Lowe ended the interview, he said, you're amazing. I mean, who doesn't love Valerie Bertinelli? And she shouts, David Lee Roth. Oh, my God. So this is the best. So he ends the interview, and then Rob goes, you know what? I'm going to get to the bottom of this. He goes, I'm going to get Roth on this podcast, and I want to know why he doesn't like Valerie.
Good luck getting a straight, direct answer from Dave.
Can you imagine a conversation between Rob Lowe and David Lee Roth?
You know what? He can totally ask Roth anything he wants, but then it is going to go straight to Homo Babel, Zebula Bubble, Bop Land.
That's
right. For sure.
I know.
For sure. But, it's interesting. And, I've read elsewhere that Roth saw Val as a threat. Not necessarily a threat to the band, but a threat to Roth being the star of the band. I mean, despite the fact the name of the band was Van Halen, right?
Yeah.
But I just wonder, she says, I wasn't the Yoko of the band. I didn't break up the band. I don't think too many people ever accused her of breaking up the band.
No.
I mean, was that really a thing?
No. I think the term Yoko was used because it becomes a derogatory term. And of course not. She had nothing to do with the breakup of the band. But what I think Dave's perspective is. Just know, I can't speak for him, but I can just tell you from an outside perspective, from reading a lot and just kind of getting his feel. Dave has a certain vision and perspective on things. He looks at the band as a giant art project. Ed looks at the band musically, okay? And you know what? That's his thing. He's a musician. That's what he does. He writes songs, he plays. Dave doesn't look at it that way. Dave looks at it in a totally different perspective. Dave looks at the 360. He thinks about the image. He thinks about the vibe. He thinks about the this. Ed doesn't give a shit about any of that, or he didn't. He gave a shit about making good music, making good records, going out and playing a show. Dave's was all about the image, the presentation, what people thought of them, and he wanted the guys to be like this pack of wild animals, roaming from town to town, drinking and drugging and performing and rocking and rolling and ripping through town like, Jesse James or something like that. He had that sort of mentality. And he's like, oh, man, you're going to get married now? And on top of that, I also thought, in his mind, it's like, now Ed's going to be distracted. And, now they're going to take more times off in between tours. Now he's not going to want to tour as much. Now he's not going to want to go all over the world. And, he did have a point there because that definitely did happen. And that's fine. And I understand. And people want to get married and have a life. And he totally has the right to do that. But I think like Sammy, for example, had definitely more of a similar home life to like Ed and the guys than Dave. Dave's like, Dave's life is the band. In fact, there's a bumper that I put on all the time. His whole life was Van Halen. It's about, the album covers and the singles and the videos and the, what am I going to wear on stage? Like that was Dave's whole thing. Ed's whole thing was his music. And I also think there was a little bit of, Ed and Val, you don't remember in the 80s. I mean, they're both like really cute, and she was like this TV star and he was this rock star, and it was like a nice narrative for like People magazine and all these other things for people like, the wild rocker and the girl next door, America's sweetheart, and it was sort of like tabloid fodder. Not in a salacious way, but sort of like, it was just like a fun thing to read about, like these two young lovebirds, and they live in California, and they do this and that, and, their opposites attract type of thing and all that. And that was getting a lot of attention. Plus, on top of that, Ed was winning, oh my God, like every greatest guitarist award in all the guitar magazines. And, he was getting a lot of attention for a guitarist in a rock band. You know what I mean? Like
right, and that's what drove Dave nuts. I don't know if I 100% agree with you on the family life and touring and work ethic thing you spoke about, because even though the rest of the band was married most of the time and had families, and Roth was single, Eddie was notorious for having a work ethic like nobody else, and his life was the band, and nothing else was getting in the way.
No, listen, I'm not saying he wasn't going to work. What I'm saying is, when you have a wife, you're not going to go out on the road for like 10 months. I mean, you're not going to do that.
No, but I think Ed would. I think Ed would go out on the road for 10 months. And meanwhile, Dave was the guy who was in the Jungle Studs, and he'd be like, all right, well, I'm going to South America for a couple of months. I'll see you when I get back. I mean, the fact of the matter is that whichever way you look at it, Dave and Ed were two very different people with two very different perspectives on the band and life. And Dave really felt like he was in charge, and certainly was in charge of certain things.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the way the dynamic of the band played out with the personalities. And then here comes Val telling Ed, like bumping him on the arm with her elbow, going, you need to stick up for yourself a little more.
She did.
You need to speak up, man. You can't let Dave walk over you like that.
And she's not wrong for saying that.
Oh, what is this? What is this? Like, this has been working out for me really well. I don't need you sticking your nose in here and making things difficult for me now.
Exactly.
Right? And his ego was already inflated because he's in one of the most popular American bands by this point. And I think that's the issue with Val rubbing Dave the wrong way.
And he also would say stuff like, I don't want to go in the studio for a year. Are you kidding me? Like, he wasn't down with the pacing of stuff. So, listen, that's what he wanted to do, and that's where things started to part. I mean, obviously things changed a bit. Anyway, moving on to Sammy. Lita Ford joined Sammy Hagar in the Circle on stage in Sammy Hagar's residency at the Strat Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. She came on stage and performed Rock Candy, which is the Montrose song, as well as Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll. Here's a clip of Rock Candy. Now here's a clip of Rock and Roll. Lita told the story that the title of her 1991 album, Dangerous Curves, was given to her by Sammy Hagar. She said, we started writing a song and never finished the song, so I took the title and used it for the album. I didn't know where that song went. She says, we're going to have to check that out. So she was excited about that. Obviously, they got along great, and they played really well together.
I can only imagine a song with the title Dangerous Curves, written by Sammy Hagar for Lita Ford, is going to turn out.
Can you imagine? He's like, Dangerous Curves, causing me to swerve. Who the fuck knows?
I think we're heading into Wham Bam Amsterdam territory, is what I think.
Oh, my God. I'm here to serve. Who knows? He's out of his mind. Nothing beats Up for Breakfast. The lyrics for Up for Breakfast are goddamn poetic. And what's even better is he loves it. He talks about, I love those lyrics. Oh, my God. When I heard those lyrics, I was just like, oh, God. I mean, it's literally like something he would have wrote on a napkin, 3 a.m, drunk at a bar. Oh, this is some good shit.
There's a few songs like that, but yes.
I know.
Up for Breakfast. Music by Edward Van Halen. Lyrics by Sammy Hagar. Well, she treated me like a personal Jesus. Got the hand put to rest. Gonna heal you. Oh, got the finger. Put it right there on the trigger. Well, pump it up. Pump it up. Baby, make it bigger. Well, I'll go crazy. Pumping it up. Pumping it up. Oh, yeah. It's gonna heal ya. She put the cream in my coffee. First thing in the morning. Put that butter on my biscuit. Honey to my melons. Woo! Cherries on bananas. You gotta need a second helping. You know I'm up for breakfast so early in the morning. Lock the front. Leave the back door open. Yeah. Hot tub loosen up. Baby's been soaking. I've been toking. I've been sipping. Slip, slide, slipping. All got me dripping wet. I'm going crazy woo. Keeping it up. Pumping it up. Pumping it up. Oh yeah. It's gonna kill you.
So now also wanted to note that Sammy and the Circle are adding dates to the Strat residency in Las Vegas. They're playing July 1st and 2nd. And these are going to be special shows because they're bringing back the Wabos, who are going to play with Sam and the Circle. And that is happening. So, get your tickets now. They're for sale right now. So that's going on. And also wanted to note that Sam has a new book out. This guy never stops, called Sammy's Cocktail Hits. 85 personal favorites from the Red Rocker. And it's bartending basics and cocktail foundations, as well as detailed cocktail recipes inspired by Hagar's favorite drinking locales. So he also said that he has things like Splash of Aloha from the Hawaii's Coolest Cocktails, or Mas Tequila, the South of the Border cocktail. You can get it on Amazon for $29.99. And he said, I wrote this book for the redheads. I have been working and studying the art of making and drinking cocktails for decades now, and have finally pulled together all my favorites, my knowledge on how to do it, and what you need to throw the best parties with the best cocktails. And I guarantee this is the only cocktail book you will ever need. So, always the pitch man, Dave. Always the pitch man. He's always selling it. I'd like for him to be selling his album. When the hell is that coming? He keeps putting out books and drinks and everything. Put out the album, for Christ's sake.
Yep, always advertising, always cross-promotional he is.
Yep, that's the truth. Sammy was also being honored in Vegas in a weird way with a shrunken head. His shrunken head will join a collection of other shrunken celebrity heads, including Rod Stewart, Rich Little, and more. The ceremony took place at the Golden Tiki, Dave, on National Cocktail Day. And it's in commemoration with the famed bar. Will roll out 4 new drinks, which will feature cocktails based on Hagar's award-winning spirits. So look at that, Dave. That is, another honor that Sammy's getting. He's getting honors all over the place. Everybody's honoring the Red Rocker, and all this branding and residencies and cocktails and books. This guy's unbelievable.
Busy as ever.
Busy as ever. Now, we had this discussion when we talked about this a little bit. We talked about shrunken heads. Dave and I would joke around. Who's got the biggest ego? Sammy or Dave? What did you say, Dave? Who do you think has the bigger ego? Or is that a dead heat?
Oh, my God. It's close. I'll give the edge to Roth.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's really close because Roth not only has the ego, he's just not modest at all. You know, like Sam, like he'll give to charity and stuff, but he will not be undercut or undersold or overshined by anybody, least of all David Lee Roth.
That's the truth.
And he will not accept the fact that his musical output with Van Halen is anything less than the musical output of David Lee Roth with Van Halen.
That's the truth.
I mean, Sam is wrong, but that's how he views it.
Yep, that's the truth. So now, more Sam news. Well, Sam is going to appear, Dave, on the new Megadeth album, which is called The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. It's coming out on July 8th. And what happens on there is Megadeth is doing a cover of his song This Planet's on Fire, Burn in Hell, on their new album, and Sammy sings on it. So now, Dave Mustaine, the head of Megadeth, was on Trunk Nation with Eddie Trunk. He said it's super badass. He said Sammy's incredibly energizing. He says he called me up and he said, "Hey, Super Dave, I'm ready to go." He says, "But I always thought it must kill him because he hates saying the word Dave." Which I thought was kind of funny.
Oh.
I thought that was kind of funny. Dave Mustaine, very funny guy. And then also wanted to let you know, we talked about on the last Van Halen news that there was this Jesse Harms project that we weren't sure about, but that Sammy was going to sing on. Jesse Harms is Sammy's old keyboardist who was in his solo band, and he was also in the Wabos, and then he also performed on Eat 'Em and Smile. And there was this rumor about this Jesse Harms solo project coming out that Sammy was going to do a bunch of songs on, and thanks to Pat Kenny and also Midwest Run, they gave us some information on it. So apparently it's called Jesse Harms All Sides, and it's sort of a box set, believe it or not. And there's a song featuring Sammy called Fallen from Grace, which is a heart song. Here's a clip. You're not going to believe this one I'm about to tell you. Do you know that Jesse Harms wrote the Eddie Money song Walk on Water?
I didn't know that.
Can you believe that? Yeah.
By himself or he co-wrote it?
I think he wrote it. That was one of his songs. He wrote that song. Interesting enough, he also toured with Eddie. If you could believe that. He also played with Kevin Cronin from the REO Speedwagon. And, of course, he played with Sammy. Another thing was kind of funny is that he wrote a song with Sammy. The song that Sammy sang on the album, Fallen from Grace, which is the Heart cover, they wrote that together for Heart on their album Brigade, which is kind of funny. I never knew that. So that was kind of neat to know. Lots of cool stuff on Jesse. Very talented guy. He wrote Both Sides Now with Sammy. He also wrote on several songs he co-wrote with Sammy on Marching to Mars, which was kind of cool. And
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and he's got this box set. No one knows when this box set's coming out, but it's called All Sides. That song's going to be on there. That's one of the Sammy songs. Give you a little taste of what's happening there. But thanks to Pat Kenny and Midwest Run, of course, for sending us that information so we get a little info for you out there. What do you make of that, Dave?
Wow, interesting. I'd love to find out what else is on that.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys who's worked with a lot of people, so that's probably a very interesting box set.
I know. Can you imagine a box set? Rare to hear a box set's coming out anywhere these days, which is interesting.
That's true.
Yeah, that's
true.
Now, Dave, this is incredible. As we always talk about the Van Halen spirit continuing in many, many fashions. And one of them came true at Ohio State University's Spring Athletic Band, who is a marching band that did an entire Van Halen-inspired performance this past Saturday during halftime of a spring game. It was unbelievable. It was just in April here, just this past weekend. They did sort of brassy renditions of Van Halen's Running with the Devil, Dreams, Panama, and Jump. And they made this incredible complex formations on the field that put together the VH logo in 1984 and Jump. And Van Halen, it was a whole 7-minute performance. Here's a clip of the band performing Dreams. Dave, I thought this was incredible, unbelievable that someone would do something like this. What did you make of this?
Yeah, I was like, wow, I didn't realize college marching bands got to this level. But their performance, if you haven't seen it yet, go on YouTube and find it. It really is something to behold. The choreography is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point they're making a figure of someone playing a guitar. It's wild.
On top of playing these songs.
Yeah, while they're playing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. The effort they put in and the results they got were just outstanding. It's wow, just really hats off to them for a job well done.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. Love to see that spirit continue. And I really thought Dreams was one of the best ones because I thought the melodic sense of that song really came through well with the brass. I thought that's why I used that as the clip. But I thought this was great, and we love to see stuff like this. So this was incredible. Now, also, we had the girls on from Pasadena for Van Halen. Obviously, they were looking to name a park after Eddie Van Halen, but it has been decided that they're going to have a new public stage in the park called the Van Halen Stage. The park is going to be called the Playhouse Village Park in Pasadena, which is currently under construction. It's scheduled to open later this year, and there's going to be a stage, not called the Eddie Van Halen Stage, the Van Halen Stage. It's going to be called. Now, the question for you, Dave, is, does Wolf play the Van Halen Stage? I mean, don't you think it would make sense for at least Mammoth to come play?
I would say yes. How many people can sit at the stage? Is he too popular of an artist to play the stage?
No, I don't. I think, look, I mean, he's not, Guns N' Roses. I mean, he's,
No, I understand, but if it only sits like a couple of hundred people, that's still probably too many.
But it's, but still, maybe it's an invite only or something. You do a special thing, but it's a park. So, I mean, imagine, how a park works. You've been to park concerts before. There's seating area and then there's the grass. I mean, you could spread out and, see what's up. I don't know. I think it would make sense. Look, Al doesn't play anymore. Okay, Dave's not going on there and performing on the Van Halen stage. He's got the Van Halen name. He's the young man. Hey, listen, you don't have to play any Van Halen songs. He is a Van Halen, so if he comes and performs Mammoth songs, why not? Should.
I think it would be great. I think it would be great. I just think it would be great if any member of the family showed up.
Yeah, of course. Well, the only
and
members
recognize all this stuff that the two fine ladies from Pasadena are doing.
I know.
And by the way, that sounds like that was a total compromise.
Yeah.
Because the park was supposed to be named. The people had voted overwhelmingly to name the whole park after Van Halen, and that didn't happen.
Right. It was between Eddie and Octavia E. Butler, who was a science fiction author, and I think Eddie received over 3,000 votes, and she received like 526.
Right, but it turns out they didn't name the park after her either, because there was something else that was named after her.
Yeah, the middle school, yeah.
Right.
Well, everybody got a little something to go home with. What can I tell you?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Now, the Grammy producer, David Wild, who is also a reporter for Rolling Stone, he was on the Mitch LaFon and Jeremy White podcast, and he was talking about the controversy surrounding Eddie Van Halen's tribute from 2021. He says it's still frustrating him because he's still getting heat for it. He says this segment lasted around 15 seconds, making Van Halen fans and other important figures in the music scene very critical of the Grammys for disrespecting Eddie. Wild said that they approached Eddie's family and estate to ask what they wanted. He then claimed that they even told them Wolfgang could do something to tribute his father. Moreover, Wild had stated that Eddie's family didn't want anyone to perform in the tribute, and due to that, they had to find footage of Eddie to show on the screen. And he said they didn't want any vocals used, just Eddie's legendary Eruption solo. So they went, and that's what they used. He said, there's not a lot of Van Halen footage out there. So they used what they had. He says, what happened was we went and told the family and the estate what we have. We told them we have these people who could perform something. If Wolfgang wants to do something, he can do that. Tell us what you're comfortable with. He was a guy I knew that I really liked. He had this guitarist that was going to perform. No one knows who this is, but I guess we can make guesses. However, he said that they didn't want anyone performing for Eddie. So he said there's very little footage of Van Halen out there, so I literally had to personally research the US Festival, which was one of the heights of their performance, and so they used Eruption, and because it was the family's desire not to have something with any vocals. What does that tell you? Don't put Sam or Dave in the shot.
Wow.
Yep, they wanted to showcase Ed, so that's what we did. He's still getting heat a year later. Now, Nuno Bettencourt, this is also interesting. The question makes you wonder, was Nuno Bettencourt the guy who David Wild was talking about, who they had ready to go up and do a tribute to Ed? He would be the perfect person because he's a hardcore Ed fan and he knows Ed's style. And he could play it easily, and he's an amazingly talented guy himself. So Nuno Bettencourt was not pleased with what the tribute that they had for Ed, and he said it should have been the world's greatest current guitarist up on that stage performing a medley tribute of Eddie Van Halen's greatest moments. Then he said, at the very least, the Grammys didn't want to waste airtime on rock and roll. They could have taken advantage of Michael Jackson's name and had Bruno Mars sing Beat It with an iconic guitarist ripping through Ed's solo. Anything but those 15 seconds of Eddie that they callously threw on there. So he was not happy. Makes me wonder if he's the guy that they were talking about. That they, very interesting. What do you think? What do you think about that?
Maybe.
You think so? Well, we'll see. Anyway, also, Michael McDonald, Dave. Michael McDonald.
The king of yacht rock.
That's right. He's a minute by minute by minute.
No. Stick to your Gene Simmons.
Well, you'd rather to me, I'll talk to my Gene Simmons. Is that a little bit better?
Dave, I swear I was listening to a rock yacht playlist, and 5 songs in, it was either a Doobie Brothers song, a Michael McDonald song, or a song that Michael McDonald was singing background vocals on. It was crazy.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. 5 for 5. I'm like, this guy was everywhere in the late 70s.
He's unbelievable.
Shine, sweet freedom, shine the light on me.
Here we go.
I can't help it. So anyway, a little interesting story here. Now, we all know, why are we even talking about Michael McDonald, right? From the Doobie Brothers? Well, Michael McDonald co-wrote I'll Wait from Van Halen's 1984 album. We all know Michael McDonald's producer was Ted Templeman, so that was the connection there. When Van Halen got stuck on I'll Wait, a track that ended up going to number 13 on the Billboard charts after the album's release, it hit the chart on number 13 in April of 1984 as the second single coming off the album. Producer Ted Templeman worked extensively with McDonald, with the Doobie Brothers, and on also McDonald's 1982 solo album, If That's What It Takes, as well as he was a co-producer on the follow-up 1985's No Looking Back. When they asked him about the situation, how he got involved, Ted Templeman said he called me up and he said, hey, these guys have a track and they need some lyrics. So I mentioned you could do it. They said, fine. So why don't you come on down? This is with Ultimate Classic Rock, an interview we did, Ultimate Classic Rock. He said that he sent me the track and I got some ideas going, so I'd have something when I got to the studio. He said the experience with Van Halen was not exciting. Started off with that.
Wow. All right.
And then he said, I met with David Lee Roth at Ted's office, and that was an interesting experience. He laughed and he said he kind of liked what I had going, so he sat there in the office with the demo playing on a cassette recorder, singing the lines and melodies. Now, McDonald's name appeared on some of the versions of the album, while others, it was absent in terms of songwriting credits. And McDonald said, I guess they thought I was Santa Claus because I had to go chasing them a little bit on that one. It's probably one of the most played things I've ever written just because it's Van Halen. And that album sold 3-4 million copies right away, which was a really big deal for me at the time. Obviously, he kind of did a favor for Ted, but didn't seem all that happy about it. What do you think?
Yeah, it was like he did him a solid, do me, right? Do me a favor.
Yeah.
And you had to go chase him for the money and all this stuff. And it was like a big pain in the butt. And it was a big selling album too, right?
Oh,
and it was a single. So,
Yeah.
of course, you don't blame Michael for being like, I just want to get paid.
Oh, yeah, totally. Unbelievable. But, I think it was so shitty that he didn't get credited on some of the printings of the album. Dave, Ted was not only the producer, but the executive at Warner Brothers and was the producer for the Doobie Brothers. How do you not make sure that's handled? I don't understand that.
Yeah, and that guy had done you a favor, too, so you think you'd be like, look, I know there's usually no outside songwriters in this band, but please make sure that this happens.
Come on.
Right?
Not cool at all. I didn't know that for a long time. It was amazing. That I always thought it was a rumor back in the day when I was younger, but it was crazy. So now, also wanted to let you know that Bill McClintock came out with another incredible mash mix-up of Van Halen, Quiet Riot, and Free. Can you believe this, Dave? It's called Van Free Riot. Ain't talking about mental health now, which kind of took Quiet Riot's 1982 single, Bang Your Head, Mental Health, Free's 1970 classic, All Right Now, and Van Halen's song, Ain't Talking About Love, mashed them all together, threw in a little spice, a little guitar fill from Van Halen's And the Cradle Will Rock, as well as a little bit of Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train in for a new mashup. Here's the clip. What did you think of this one, Dave?
Very creative, very creative. Not as much Van Halen as I would have liked.
Right.
But, the way this guy mixes stuff together is, I don't know how he figures this out. Another solid, I don't want to say performance, but I guess another solid production.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, wanted to let you know about Steve Vai is out there promoting his new album, Inviolate, and he talked about the night he almost jammed with Prince. So Steve Vai and Prince almost had a jam at Paisley Park. Steve Vai at the time was playing in Minneapolis. His wife's cousin worked at Paisley Park, which is Prince's studio. He oversaw the studio and everything, and he had invited Steve to come down, and when he got there, Prince summoned two guys from his band who were in bed sleeping, his guys Sonny T and Michael Bland. They were the drummer and the bassist. He woke them up, and they got there late. So it was like 2, 3 in the morning. Apparently, they got them up and they got them down there and they started jamming on stage with Steve. Steve said it was great. These guys were like magic. He says Prince had it made with these guys. And then Steve Vai was informed that the boss was coming down to jam with him. And he's like, oh boy. He says, we're jamming and time's going by and it's getting later and later and earlier in the morning. He says he just didn't show up. And he says, I gotta get going. I gotta go. I got my next gig. He says, I'm sorry, I had to leave. But from what he was told, that Prince was watching the whole thing on cameras and he was videotaping it. So somewhere out there is this incredible jam of Steve Vai performing at Paisley Park. You can believe that. So what do you think of that, Dave? Wouldn't that be cool, Steve Vai with Prince?
It would have been if Prince hadn't been a dick. I mean, that's really a dick move to say, hey, come over and play with me. And you're like there in the next room the whole time watching the guy play. He's waiting to play with you. Mm-hmm. And you're like, nah, I'm just going to sit back and videotape the whole thing.
So rude.
Well, the guy waits up all night for you.
Amazing, amazing. You want to hear another funny story that Howard Stern told about Prince? So he went to a private concert with Prince, and he was all excited because he never saw Prince live, and he loved Prince, right? So he's all excited. He's in the Hamptons. I don't know where the hell he was. I think it was the Hamptons. And so he gets excited. He gets this party, exclusive party, and Prince comes out, and Prince comes on stage, and he starts playing. And Prince insisted that no lights be shined upon the stage when he performs. So Howard was so pissed because he was playing in the dark with no lights on the stage because Prince decided that night he didn't want any lights on the stage. He was a fucker.
He was.
So now we've been waiting for this Talus album. Now, on the last Van Halen news, I had to insert it in the news that Intermountain Flame came out, right? The Talus song, Intermountain Flame, came out. Phenomenal song, right? What did you make of that?
Oh, my God. So hard rocking.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah, I know.
Like a few days after we had done the news and before we were going to put it on the podcast, and it was like, and after we were talking smack, and we were like, when is this damn thing going to come out? And so the first song has come out. It sounds great. And we are itching to find out when the whole album is going to come out. Still no word on that. By the way,
yep.
Still radio silence on that. We're told as soon as possible by Billy, but no more firm information. But a little teaser there. Sounds great. If you haven't heard it yet, it's on YouTube. It's on Spotify.
Right.
Great rockin' song.
Absolutely. And we found out that not only does Phil Norro, the late lead singer of Talus, have that album in the can, he's got another album in the can with this band called Lips Turn Blue. And this is an old band which used to be called D Drive. And he's in this band with Mike Mullane on bass, Don Mancuso on guitar, Eric Bieber on keyboards, and Ron Stein on drums. And they made this album, and it's an upstate New York band. And they obviously got a new lead singer since Phil passed away called Iggy Marino, and they're ready to go out and perform it live. And here's the first single called Pray for Tomorrow.
And you keep moving on. Father said to me, pray for tomorrow. And there'll be better days if you light the way. Pray for tomorrow. Pray for tomorrow. Pray for tomorrow.
Now, the album is coming out in April 2022. Don Mancuso said we wanted to get this amazing music out there. It needs to be played to as many music fans as possible. After our period of mourning Phil's loss, we now have the drive and experience to take the music on the road and finish out our next album, which is already in the works. He said that Iggy, who is the new lead singer, is also a fan of the existing album and will be faithful to Phil's vision. So what do you think of Lips Turn Blue? Who knew this existed?
Man, I found it by accident. I was looking for Talus stuff, and this turned up in the search, and I was like, he's got another unreleased.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, he was working till the very end, this guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think he had just finished the Talus album when his medical diagnosis had gotten worse, unfortunately. But I guess he was still working with these other guys. So I mean, it's great for his legacy that this stuff is coming out. And, if he has 2 albums coming out this year, what a great salute to the man, for sure.
Absolutely.
I hope that Talos album comes out soon. Maybe if we talk a little more smack, the album will be released like a few days after we do this.
Oh, that would be helpful. That's always helpful when that happens. I have to redo everything. That's always fun. Also wanted to let you know that David Lee Roth's former guitarist, Frankie Lindia, who he stole from Rat, is currently being featured in a commercial for the 5150 series Full Throttle Attitude, promoting the guitars such as the 5150 Deluxe Purple Haze and the 5150 Standard Slime Green guitars. It shows that all the various features like the Wolfgang pickups, the EVH D-Tuna, the tone control, and the top mount Floyd Rose bridge. There's no Eddie Van Halen music played in the commercial, but he does play in Eddie's style. Here's a clip of Frankie playing. Also want to let you know about Frankie. New news on him, too. He is the new guitarist in the Atomic Punks, if you can believe that. So,
really?
Yes. Fresh news. So,
wow.
Yeah.
What happened to the last guy?
I think he quit or he went someplace else. I don't know. He flew the coop. So this is now Frankie's job, and he's in the driver's seat there. So that's happening there. Also want to let you guys know about this. Kind of was shocking to me. Now, do you know Machine Gun Kelly, Dave? You know who he is?
I know of Machine Gun Kelly.
Okay, Machine Gun Kelly was a rapper who has now kind of transferred over to punk pop. He really sounds so much like Blink-182. It's like shocking. That's how much he sounds like. So anyway, he's good, though. He's very good. Machine Gun Kelly also played the role of Tommy Lee in The Dirt and did an unbelievable job, by the way. Now, Machine Gun Kelly has a new song on his latest album, Mainstream Sellout, it's called. Ready for the song? It's called 5150.
Really?
It's unbelievable. Now, here's a clip.
You're crazy. 5150. I won't go. 5150. You'll make me. 5150. I'm damn it. Please don't fix me.
Now, the song is not a Van Halen remake of the song 5150, but rather a new song using the police code for the escaped mental patient and no Van Halen reference at all. So I was like, what's going on here? But I mean, it's a good song. It's actually a good song, but really just funny because that is so branded to Eddie. I mean, it's the name of his studio. It's the name of his album. It's the name of a song. It's the name of his guitar series, right? We just talked about it with Frankie and Lindia. I mean, like, it's so much his thing. And it's really not used for anything else. Obviously, the police code, of course, right? But it's weird that he would use that. Don't you think it's strange?
I guess, but, he might be completely oblivious to the Van Halen thing. And maybe he just lives in L.A. and they're still using that code.
He does, but wouldn't someone key him in? Like, someone at the record company, like, that's Eddie's thing. Like, would you
maybe,
really,
maybe they're oblivious, too.
Who knows?
Maybe somebody said something and he was like, Eddie who? And he didn't or he didn't care.
Yeah, it's true. Guitarist John Five, former podcast guest here, also from the DLR band. Remember he played with David Lee Roth? He's also the guitarist on that Roth album, the California Sessions, which never seems to be coming out. But there is a documentary coming out on John Five, and has Michael Anthony in it. And guess who else is going to be added to the documentary? They're doing interviews with Roth, Dave, to add to the doc. Yeah. So they're actually holding up production on it to add an interview with Roth to it. So coming out early next year, and it should be interesting. I'm very curious to see what Roth has to say.
Oh, I hope he's coherent.
What chance is there of that?
Slim to none, and Slim just walked out the door.
That's right. Well, that wraps up Van Halen news.
And that's the way it is. Good night.
And we are on to our 6th anniversary special, and what do we have for you? Only the real Van Halen deets. So what do we got? We have an exclusive interview with Private Life lead singer Kelly Breznik. If you guys remember, back in the late 80s, Eddie produced 2 albums by a band called Private Life. And we have the lead singer who talks about her entire journey with Ed, recording those 2 albums and going on tour. They supported Van Halen on the OU812 tour in 1988. So we get all into the details on that. I also have an interview with guitarist G.E. Smith, who performed with Eddie Van Halen in 1987 on SNL, Saturday Night Live, when Eddie performed Stompin' at 8H. So we're going to get into all that, but before that happens, oh boy, do we have mail. We got mail, Dave, and it's all coming down on you. Everybody has heard about you slacking, and they've been writing in like crazy.
Wonderful. I hope your editing skills will be put to task.
Yes,
tonight.
they were. I slashed and sliced and diced left and right, so I know you like it tight and right. That's all coming up next. Take a listen.
For Edward and I, there is a lot of whatever that chemical is in guys. That, you know, we never lost it. We both are competitive with ourselves personally to an obsessive, obsessive compulsive nature. I mean, with or without an Eddie Van Halen in my life, you know, a lot of my time is spent with my head in my hands going, "Come on, Dave, come on," like this, and still to this day, and he as much or more so. Then together with each other, there is that mutual support of, wow, am I glad I met you? Wow, we've done some great stuff together. And that also combines with, I think you're in my space.
If you need a dose of VH, get a taste of the closest thing. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band, playing all the hits from the David Lee Roth era, first classic 6 albums, plus deep cuts, some of which have never been played live before by the band. They even throw in popular tracks from the Sammy Hagar era and solo hits. The most viewed Van Halen tribute band on YouTube, Romeo Delight, doing customized recreations of staging, instruments, and costumes from the classic Van Halen era. They even perform entire Van Halen albums in sequence. Romeo Delight plays theaters, casinos, summer indoor and outdoor festivals, and special events. They're also available for private parties. To contact them, call Bud Blanche at 215-704-5144. That's 215-704-5144. Or via email at sonicparade1@yahoo.com. Romeo Delight, the ultimate Van Halen tribute band.
Pick up the new book, Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen, by Brad Tolinski and Chris Gill. These music journalists share with fans new and old alike a candid, compulsively readable, and definitive oral history of the most influential rock guitarist since Jimi Hendrix. It is based on more than 50 hours of unreleased interviews they recorded with Eddie Van Halen over the years, most of them conducted at the legendary 5150 studios at Ed's home in Los Angeles. The heart of Eruption is drawn from these intimate and wide-ranging talks, as well as conversations with family, friends, and colleagues. In addition to discussing his greatest triumphs as a groundbreaking musician, including an unprecedented dive into Van Halen's masterpiece 1984, the book also takes an unflinching look at Edward's early struggles as a young Dutch immigrant unable to speak the English language, which resulted in lifelong issues with social anxiety and substance abuse. Eruption, Conversations with Eddie Van Halen. Get your copy today on Amazon.com.
Hey, y'all out there. This is Niels Lozauer, rock and roll photographer for many world-renowned bands, especially Van Halen. And you're listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
The long-awaited Van Halen book from legendary rock journalist Steve Rosen is almost here. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. This is an over 400-page odyssey of Rosen's decades interviewing and being friends with the late guitar god, Eddie Van Halen. Rosen says, I spent 14 long, hard months writing Tone Chaser. It was both the most difficult story I've ever written and the most rewarding. I wanted to be honest and transparent as I possibly could, which was not always an easy thing to do. In the end, this was the most complete and comprehensive book I could have possibly written. There was nothing left to say when I reached the last page. With every word I wrote, I was reminded of the time I spent with Edward, and that hurt terribly. But it also brought back what a remarkable experience that was, and how insanely lucky I had been to have ever known him, and astonishingly to have been friends with him. I hope you can feel everything I felt. That is the purpose of this book. Pre-sales are currently going on now for the self-published book. PayPal Steve directly at scrosen@sbcglobal.net. That's scrosen@sbcglobal.net. It's $47 for those who are buying it inside the U.S., and that includes shipping. $95 for those who are buying it overseas, and that includes shipping. Tone Chaser, Understanding Edward, my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen. Don't miss out. Order it today. Pick up the new coffee table-sized book, The Decade That Rocked, by legendary rock photographer Mark Weissguy Weiss. This 376-page book has hundreds and hundreds of full-color photos that Weiss shot through the 80s for magazines like Circus, Faces, and Hit Parader, featuring bands like Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. There's even behind-the-scenes stories to go with these colorful, eye-popping pictures. The Decade That Rocked, a new book by rock photographer Mark Weiss, is available for purchase now. Go to thedecadethatrocked.com, where there are exclusive bundles available with extra prints, t-shirts, and even patches. Inquire about the Van Halen bundle, especially made for Dave and Dave Unchained listeners. Order today. The Decade That Rocked. It'll rock your world.
Sammy does his job. He does well. Sammy's a singer, but it's the difference between a single word. Sammy's a singer. David Lee's the singer.
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Well, my buddy Dave, he don't want me around. He says he's tired of watching me let him down. He just wants a good mailbag. He wants only the best. But he hates disappointment better than all the rest. And he says that he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble if I don't nail the mailbag intro.
That's right, it's mailbag time again. And we got a lot to get through, so no wasting time. Letter number 1 comes from Mark Frank. Could you give me your opinion on the Van Halen tour programs from the David Lee Roth era? Rate them 1 to 10. Are they worth obtaining? Well, that's a lot to ask, Mark. I do have a bunch of them. I don't have every single one of them. However, I've seen a lot of them. I can tell you this. I can't rate them 1 to 10 from the David Lee Roth era because there's not even 10 of them to rate because the David Lee Roth era is only a handful. There's a couple missing here and there, but let me just tell you this. Give you a couple tips. The Fair Warning tour program is hands down the top of the list for any of them, for artistry, for creativity. Interesting tip on the different kind of Truth tour program. Only available from the Japan shows. I've never seen one from the American tour, so that's kind of interesting. Really good one also is Women and Children First from 1980, very solid, that's really good. And also want to let you know, the 1979 one, World Tour, little chintzy, kind of cool vintage photos, little chintzy though. 1984 one, very strange, sort of a spiral notebook look. I wasn't crazy about that one. There's also one for Diver Down, 1982. That's a really good one with the lion on the cover. That's a really strong one. So if you were going to get any, I guess the Fair Warning is the best. Second best, 1982, Diver Down. Third best, probably Women and Children First. The lowest, I'd say, maybe 1984. Really, I was so devastated at how poor that one was. It almost looks like a notebook you get for school or something. It's really odd. That's all I can tell you about that. Dave, what do you think?
I have nothing to add, actually, because I really don't follow or ever collected those things.
Right, yeah.
So I'm going to let you take the lead on this one, because I really don't know.
Yeah, I figured you said. Okay, number 2 comes from Keith Sousa.
You figured I'd say that because this way we can get through the mail that much faster.
No, because I knew you didn't collect them. I knew you didn't. I just don't know if you saw them or not. That's a relax. Don't get nasty. It's a late hour, folks. It's getting rough. So letter number 2 comes from Keith Sousa from Colorado. He says, thanks, guys, for your energy and hard work. I really appreciate all your time. I was listening to the Best of Van Halen Volume 1, and I love Me Wise Magic, and I hit the shuffle after it was over and Dreams came on, and I thought the lyrical content of that song was really solid for Sammy. Which Sammy era album do you think has the overall strongest lyrics, not performance? I'm torn, but leaning toward 5150. Curious to know what you think. Keith Sousa from Colorado. Well, Keith, to be honest with you, it's really a song-by-song case with Sam. In my opinion, there's no whole album that stands out amongst the rest. For example, you talk about 5150, right? Well, Good Enough, Get Up, Inside, Summer Nights, Why Can't This Be Love? I loved all those songs, however, very weak lyrically. However, you look at the other songs of the album, Dreams, Best of Both Worlds, Love Walks In, 5150, strong lyrically, okay? Then you got Hit or Miss. You got really strong lyrical songs like Seventh Seal, Judgment Day, Don't Tell Me, Right Now, The Dream Is Over, Mine All Mine, all over the place. Then you got really weak ones like Sucker in a Three-Piece, Amsterdam, Pound Cake, Runaround, Big Fat Money, Black and Blue, AFU. Those are sort of weak lyrically. So it really is hit or miss all over the albums. There's no real album that stands out lyrically amongst the others. Crossing Over is another song that I thought was great lyrically, but it's all over the place. So what do you think, Dave?
You know, I wasn't thinking about that way, but I think you're right in terms of you have to think about it song by song.
Yeah.
Because for every Right Now that Sam has, for example, on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, there's a Pleasure Dome.
Yep.
Or for every Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do, there's a Wham Bam Rollin' Amsterdam.
Yeah, exactly. Pleasure Dome, by the way, unbelievable musical song. The lyrics are just horrible.
No, agreed. And then, you go to OU 812, and there's Source of Infection is like nothing to write home about. And even Sam admits that's when he was starting to get lazy with the lyrics. Because that's basically just like, hey, how you doing? Hey. It's like
just unbelievable.
It's almost like stream of consciousness lyrics. Maybe 5150 in terms of picking an album, because I guess there's nothing really too egregious. Although I guess
come on, those girls are biting good tonight. Hey, waitress, take an order, man.
That's hokey, but that's not nearly as criminally bad as some other stuff he has written.
No, I know.
I'm thinking more of like the inside, but I don't know.
I tell you, it's so funny. It really is a split down the middle. Like, listen to the lyric of Spanked. You listen to the lyrics of Pleasure Dome. Fucking horrible lyrics. Then you listen to The Dream Is Over, and you listen to Judgment Day. The lyrics are phenomenal. Sam is hit or miss. Dave and I have talked about this all the time. When he concentrates and really focuses, he's great. But there are times he just fucking mails it in, man. And
it's like he focuses on like 2/3 or 3/4 of the album.
I know.
And then the rest of it, like, he just can't be bothered.
You could tell he's like riding it on the back of a menu while he's on the beach or something. You can tell. It's like, I lost you, Sam. I lost you, Sam. That's why we talked about in our last episode when John Kalodner was like, I am locking you in the house and I want 20 good songs. He was locking it down. Yeah. Letter number 3 comes from, it's our friend Dave Simiak, Solo Jew from Tehran, Iran, as we always like to say. He thinks that Van Halen is the band we know strongly because of Ted Templeman. I know Eddie and Dave and their magic back in the day, but if it wasn't for Ted on the first 6 albums, they couldn't have built their dynasty the way we know them now. I have no doubt about it. I listened to the first riffs of Ain't Talk About Love, Unchained, Light Up the Sky, Mean Streets, Breakdown, and the one they used, and She's the Woman, Atomic Punk, the whole thing. You can feel Ted's footsteps even on the Fuck album. In my theory, he says Ted was a vital part of Van Halen's history. If he wasn't there, there was no VH in the shape or form. I mean, Ted doing 5150 with Mitch Malloy would have been a platinum album, in my opinion. Anyway, what do you think? So you also wanted to ask us, what are our top 5 Eddie solos? Not the hardest ones. Which ones are your favorites? Tell me each, Dave, separately. Wow, okay. Well, that's a kind of a hard thing to answer. But, okay, number 1, I want to say this. Ted played a huge role in becoming an expert on capturing Van Halen's sound. Along with engineer Don Landy, Don Landy deserves just as much credit as Ted. Now, they get equal credit here because they worked as a team. Ted built those albums in a timeless way. The sound is phenomenal. However, he didn't write the songs, okay? Ed and Dave wrote the songs. They get the credit for that, but he definitely gets the credit, along with Don, for the sound and making that sound not sound dated. Those albums sound so fresh. So I will give him all the props for that. Him and Don, for sure. Must be Don Landy as well, though, because sonically, they're the ones who delivered. Now, my top 5 solos, that is so effing hard, my friend. However, I'm going to pull just some favorites. Out of Love Again, Big River, Romeo Delight, Push Comes to Shove, and I'm the One, tied with Hot for Teacher. Those are some of my favorites. What about you, Dave?
Let me go to my list. I actually did my homework on this one.
Oh, my God. Oh, that was my anniversary.
I did, though. It was tough. I was like, I'm just going to pick, like, the first things that come to my mind.
Yeah, it's
like,
too
I'll
hard.
spend all night doing this.
Yeah.
So, Eruption.
Okay.
Drop Dead Legs.
Right.
I'm the One.
Mm-hmm.
Humans Being.
Right.
And One Way to Rock Live.
Oh, he even puts a Hagar song in there for you. Wow. But you're right, though. The live version is insane. It's insane.
And kudos to you for picking a solo off of A Different Kind of Truth. I almost did that.
I have to tell you, I marvel at that album more and more. Especially, we all know it's his last, but let me tell you something, man. There is some unbelievable playing, not just by Ed, Al, and by Wolf and Dave. That album blows me away so much. The more and more I listen to it, I pick up new things every time I hear it, and holy shit, I got so into Big River recently, I can't get over it. So yeah, I love that album, and I think it belongs right in the 6-pack, now the 7-pack. Letter number 4 comes from Steve Chappell, and he says here, I started listening to the latest March episode in the news section. Funny thing, you were discussing Eric Martin's possible audition for Van Halen on a recent episode of Pot of Thunder podcast. They had Chris Jericho and PJ Farley to discuss VOA. Sammy Hagar And about the 28-minute mark, they talked about Eric Martin's audition for Van Halen and some additional insight there, and he gave us a link. He also said he totally agrees with Loud Dave, which is me, about the most popular rock band list. 90s bands were good in their own right, but not as influential as the classic rock artists, although enough with Nirvana and Guns N' Roses. Love them both, but they are basically living off the popularity of one album. Bon Jovi at 17, give me a fucking break. He's about as influential as nobody. Love the show. Keep up the great work, Steve Chappell. Well, Steve, I want to say that in general, Van Halen, because of their timing, they say timing is everything in life, right? They're not properly respected or treated with the cachet or upper echelon of a Led Zeppelin, The Who, or the Stones, or even Aerosmith, AC/DC, or Black Sabbath. So, you know, because they came out in the late 70s, but they're also considered like an 80s band, and they're not really a hair band, but they influenced the hair band movement, they're this sort of like caught in the middle type of thing. They're definitely a bridge from one decade into the next, yeah, I agree with you. Nirvana and Guns N' Roses, although great and unique, and I love them to pieces, but overpraised for a smaller body of work for sure. I'll let that slide over some of those other bands that were on that list. But I really wonder, though, if Van Halen ended in 1984, what the legacy would be like. My personally feeling is I think it would be even less than it is now, Dave. What do you think?
You might be right on that one.
Yeah. All right. Is that all you have to say?
That's all I have to say about that.
All I have to say about that. Letter number 5 comes from Devon Miller. And he said, you said Eddie wrote the song 316 for Wolfgang. I have to disagree with you. Eddie wrote this piece of music at least 5 years before Wolf was born. He used it at the beginning of his solo during the 5150 tour, and he has been playing it ever since. He originally called it Happy Blues. When Valerie was pregnant with Wolf, Eddie used to play the acoustic guitar up to her belly and play that song to calm Wolf down from kicking when Wolf was born, and Eddie used to play it as a lullaby to him. As far as the ongoing debate of how the intro to Hot for Teacher was recorded, I personally have always thought it was Alex on his Simmons drums, then bringing in the acoustic kick drums and toms before finally transitioning into the iconic double kick, snare, ride cymbal groove for the rest of the song. I know Ted Templeman said the intro was Eddie's Ferrari, but I think he's confusing that with the Sounds of Panama, in which the Ferrari was made according to Eddie. I tried looking for any live recordings of Alex doing the complete intro like it was done in the studio, but I am not able to find it. What I did find was a lesson from Modern Drummer demonstrating the song intro after referencing several interviews they conducted over the years with Alex. This lesson demonstrates that it is possible to play the intro in one take without any overdubs. The instructor even says at the beginning of the lesson that Alex plays the first part on Simmons electronic drums. While this can be an assumption by the instructor, I believe it does carry some weight considering it is coming from a magazine that has interviewed Alex several times. The only way we will get a definitive answer is if Alex says in an interview exactly what he did. But then I'm convinced that we are hearing Simmons electronic drums at the start of that and then adding in the acoustic kit. I also play in a classic rock cover band called Standing Hampton, and we play like 6 or 7 Sammy Hagar songs, including One Way to Rock, I'll Fall in Love Again, Heavy Metal, Piece of My Heart, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, and I've Done Everything for You. I've known from the beginning that the British slang meaning of the name, and we play that up, although not overtly. Devon Miller. So yeah, Devon, let me tell you, congrats on the band. That sounds really interesting. Yes, number one, I am fully aware that the piece of music you are referring to as Happy Blues, which turned into 316, was not written directly for Wolf, because I saw the 5150 tour live in 1986 and watched Live Without a Nut a billion times before 316 ever came out. So yes, I've just called it the song he wrote for Wolf because he named it after him, but I know he wrote it beforehand. Yes, I'm well aware of that. Thank you. The Hot for Teacher thing can only be solved, in my opinion, by Don Landy or Alex Van Halen. I think Ted mixed it up, by the way, and it's also Eddie's Lamborghini, not his Ferrari, so perhaps you misspoke the way I misspoke. I didn't mean to lead you to believe about the Wolf thing, but yeah, it's not a Ferrari, it's definitely a Lamborghini. Also, it could be the Simmons drums, mimicking the motor, and then leading into the acoustic drums. That sounds pretty all right to me. Dave, what do you think?
I'm really torn about this because at first I was like, no, there's no way there's a car doing the intro to that song. That's Al. But I really think Ted Templeman was there. He would know, right?
Yeah, I know, but the thing that kills me is Eddie said in his Smithsonian interview, okay, that they recorded this part of Panama with his Lamborghini. So he said it very clearly. And here's a clip.
One of my cars is on the recording, too. The breakdown in Panama, where it goes, oh, I'm a little hot tonight. It's one of my cars. A 1972 Miura S Lamborghini.
So now, do you really do that back-to-back singles? From Panama to Hot for Teacher, you record the Lamborghini on both? I mean, it seems a little... Is it possible that Ted is mixing it up with Panama?
Maybe, or they just, they had the car there and they decided to use it for two different things. And, the intro to Hot for Teacher was a little more subtle. We're going to get to another letter about that, which has a really
a whole bunch of them,
Right, which has a really good theory on how it was done and really makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait for that one. So,
Okay.
in the last few months, I think it's more possible now than ever that is the case. At first, I was really skeptical about it, but now I think there's some more evidence and more credence that it happened that way.
Right. Letter number 6 comes from Tim O'Brien. He says, I find this discussion of the Panama lyric absolutely hilarious. There is no doubt that the original recording is full blast and top down, and this recent Twitter post at Van Halen Lyrics is another vote for the original. Beyond the fact that it is the first lyric, it also makes better sense as a piece of prose. The music is loud and the top is down versus a person tapping their foot while driving. Which foot? And the top is down. So I understand what you're saying, Tim O'Brien. Tim, I totally understand what you're saying. I think it's full blast and top down. Foot tapping doesn't even make sense, but my God, it is everywhere, that foot tapping thing. I keep seeing it pop up everywhere. It's unbelievable, Dave. What do you make of this?
It's amazing how this lyrical snafu has grown with people writing in every month.
It's unbelievable.
About what it is or what it isn't, how it happened. I mean, this was just something people had brought up, and now we've got all sorts of documentation on this.
Oh, my God.
I think Roth changed the lyric at the last minute in the studio.
Yeah.
And the lyrics were already printed to go as they were, and somewhere along the line, people either used the printed lyric or remember hearing it when they heard the album. And that's just how they're singing it. I guess including Roth, depending on the day.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on the day. It's incredible. Unbelievable. Letter number 7 comes from Mark Carlton from the UK. He says, a couple of things before I get to my point. I've been listening to a lot of the shows, and I want to say that the conspiracy pitch to every other offer that comes on about there being a movement by Ted to oust Dave in 1985 and tipping Sam off to the vacancy in the band, man, that has to stop. What the fuck are you talking about? LOL.
Bravo! 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 Best letter of the evening.
Okay, good. Now I'm going to read the extended version. Number 2, it's been raised a couple times about Van Halen supporting Bon Jovi in Europe around Balance. I was mortified at the time and didn't go, but now I wish I had. Van Halen played 3 arena shows around 15,000 each in the UK. We're live here right now. They were pretty much sold out. Same across Europe, but the shows with Bon Jovi were stadiums. Bon Jovi are huge here in Europe. Supporters were Thunder and Ugly Kid Joe and Van Halen were billed as very special guests, but I still couldn't accept Van Halen being before them. Right to my point, I simply cannot believe that Van Halen fans and you guys didn't know this. I was listening to you talk about it the other day and I was literally screaming at my speakers. He also said, the Hot for Teacher intro, it is not Alex doing 2 takes. The opening 6 seconds is Ed's Lamborghini engine mic'd up and the pitch shifted. 6 seconds in, you hear Al's drums start to be mixed in. How people can't hear this is beyond me. It's been discussed openly on one of the Sunset Sounds episodes, the one with Doug Messenger. Mark Carlton from the UK. Well, Mark, let me start by saying this. Number 1, the Ted theory is my opinion. It's my perspective. I personally think the authors were a little leery to comment on it, to be honest with you. They were a little nervous about commenting on it because it's sort of a very...
No, they weren't nervous about commenting on it. What happened was no one is buying into your theory.
Okay.
But you insist on asking every author about that theory. But every author has either said, no, I really didn't see that or at all, or the other ones had flat out said no. But you're just going to keep on asking until someone says yes and agrees that this was the way it was.
Okay, you had your fun. Now I'm going to tell you.
I did. You could have worked for the White House between 2016 and 2020.
Oh, my God. You bastard. So now listen.
I know.
Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
I am. I admit that.
Yeah.
Yes,
Hey, listen. Happy anniversary to me. Listen, you're not going to convince me otherwise. I do believe in that theory. I'm not saying everybody has to share that opinion. It's a theory. Okay? Let's not get crazy. Now, I will come down on you for this, my friend. Listen, if Van Halen plays before Bon Jovi in a stadium, they are opening for Bon Jovi. I don't give a shit about the term very special guest, because that's pure marketing to make them feel like they're not opening for Bon Jovi. But let me tell you, they opened for Bon Jovi, and let me tell you this. Sammy still regrets doing that, and it makes him sick to his stomach that they did that. And who the hell can blame him? For Christ's sake, it's absolutely insane. Nothing against Bon Jovi. I love Bon Jovi. But Jesus Christ, Van Halen should have never been opening up for Bon Jovi. And I don't give a shit. They could have called them the unbelievable legends coming down from heaven. They're opening for Bon Jovi. It doesn't matter. It's all marketing. All that tells you is they're going to have a longer set than a regular opening act because they're more well-known. Very special guest. And let me tell you something. I do this for a living, so I know about all that lingo. The very special guest or support act is what you call like a really smaller band. You know, it's enough with you.
I always love how Sam regrets stuff after he gets paid well for it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Listen, they had a Europe problem, Van Halen, because they fucking dropped the ball and stopped touring Europe. They started chinsing in 1984 by playing a few festivals, thinking that covers everything. No, you gotta tour Europe. You know who really did it right? Bon Jovi.
Yes.
They're still touring the fucking world because Doc McGee, the crazy manager that he is, okay, and he's a smart guy, he's a little shady, but it's all right, he's smart. Doc had them play the entire fucking globe. John Bon Jovi owes Doc for that because they are globally known. They play stadiums around the world because of Doc. Because Doc forced them to play everywhere. And now Bon Jovi plays everywhere. So, you know, it's still going on. But Van Halen, man, they started getting lazy. 5150, they didn't want to go overseas. Then when they went overseas for All You Went To was for Japan shows. That's because Japan pays through the nose to get a band like Van Halen to come play there, which is why you saw Van Halen going over there on the Different Kind of Truth tour. Those guys pay top dollar to bring the bands over there because they know it's a trek and it's a haul to get all that stuff over there, but they pay big money to get that stuff there. That's why they get their own tour books and everything. Anyway, moving on to, also want to tell you that the Hot for Teacher thing could very well be what you said, but only Al or Don Landy really know the truth, and good luck getting it out of them, that's for sure. Letter number 8 comes from Vegas Paul Davis, Dave, one of your favorites there. So he says here, thank you for the spotlight and what may be Sammy's best album, Standing Hampton. He had great insight into There's Only One Way to Rock on the Live Without a Net version with the greatest Van Hagar performance ever. The keyboards on Can't Get Loose is another deep track. Is fantastic. Bravo, Quiet Dave, for props on Baby It's You. Well, you're really getting all kinds of accolades tonight, Dave. Sweet Hitchhiker. This song rips. Midwest Ron style. I have a correction. Although using the term rapist in a song is probably best avoided. I believe the actual lyrics are, ain't no convict, I ain't no rapist. It may be a little bit crazy, but I'm not insane. Quiet Dave inferred that Sammy was saying he was a little bit of a rapist.
Oh, okay. I didn't know I left that impression. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he can't be a little bit of a rapist. Thanks for sharing. Don't Get Hooked. I've never heard that song before, and I agree that this song and Satisfied should have been replacing Surrender and In From the Outside. Yeah. Question. Listen to 38 seconds into Don't Get Hooked to the 30 seconds into Three Lock Box, which was released the following year. To me, it sounds like Sammy reimagined Don't Get Hooked to use Three Lock Box. Great job as always, guys. Next up, I want to see the D&D treatment of Crazy from the Heat. Best regards, Vegas Paul Davis. Well, let me tell you, Paul, thank you for your suggestion for Standing Hampton. Thanks for writing in as always. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm actually warming up to Baby It's You a little bit in honor of my buddy here. He has made me look at it with new ears. The rapist word, you don't really want to put rapist in any lyrics. That's not a term you want to use for sure. I don't care how
bad then, bad now.
That's right. It just doesn't belong in anywhere. It's an ugly word, and it has horrible meaning. Don't Get Hooked, Three Lock Box. Yeah, there's definitely some DNA there, but let's remember, Don't Get Hooked really wasn't widely released. So if he used a little bit of the guitar for Three Lock Box, he's not really stealing from anybody because he wrote it himself. So that's cool. In terms of Crazy from the Heat, yeah, I have been working on a Crazy from the Heat episode for a while. However, there's pieces to it I haven't been able to put together in terms of I wanted to get some interviews to pair with it. You know, the album is only 4 songs long, so I needed to build something up. But when I get that together, we'll definitely do that for sure. I've been working on that for years. I'm not kidding about that, too. What do you say about that, Dave? You anything to say to your buddy Vegas, Paul Davis?
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're coming around about Baby It's You.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging. I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear somebody else likes that song too.
I'm gonna deem that our official anniversary song.
That's funny. That's funny. Are we going to lead out with that song on the anniversary show?
Yeah, why not? We'll do a slow dance at the end to that song.
Oh, very nice. All right. How romantic.
Exactly.
Fan-freaking-tastic. Can't wait.
Well, letter number 9 comes from Shannon the Dude, Dave. And let me tell you something. This is a strange letter. You know, he goes all over the place. He calls the lyric from Panama, "Bold Passin' Towel Down."
Now we're just making up stuff.
Yeah, I know. He goes, this will help with the towel down argument, but not the bold passing part of it. He sent us links, and he sent me a link to the song Slow Down, so you could really hear the lyric. And he also sent me, on the last one, he plays me the Panama video, right? He goes, if at about 25 seconds in, read Dave's lips. He goes, I'm digging in on the bold passing because I'll meet you halfway on top down. Can you believe this? He thinks it's bold passing.
Wow.
So, listen, man, this full blast top down is so crazy. The slowed down version obviously says full blast top down. Then he sent me the Pat Boone version, Dave, of Panama, where he says foot tapping top down. And then I watched David Lee Roth, his mouth in the video on Panama. It's hard to tell, you know, what he's saying there because it just goes by so fast. But I'm still standing by full blast and top down. What do you think?
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
But again, you know, we've heard and seen it both ways. So I still don't think this is the letter we're referring to. So I think we still have to keep on going.
Yeah, we got to keep going. Letter number 10 comes from our friend Phil Piazza from New Halen, Connecticut, where they filmed Live Without a Net back in 1986. So he says here, love the podcast, and we could all appreciate the greatest of Van Halen, but I took another approach to identify my top 10, really 11, most underappreciated tunes. He says here, number 1, Feel Your Love Tonight. It's the first song he heard from Van Halen, and he was hooked on it from the harmonies. Number 2, Women in Love from Van Halen 2. He says, Dance the Night Away and Beautiful Girls get all the accolades, but give me this song any day of the week. Number 3, In a Simple Rhyme from Women and Children First. He says, amazing tune that gets 0 airplay. Number 4, One Foot Out the Door from Fair Warning. He says, Eddie's guitar solo is crazy, but it's too short. Number 5, Hang 'em High from Diver Down. He says, it's among Eddie's top 10 riffs. And number 6 is the song House of Pain from 1984. He said 16 lines of lyrics and just sick guitar licks, one after the other. Number 7 is 5150 from the album 5150. He says, great licks, strong lyrics by Sammy, could use less electronic drums. Number 8 is Source of Infection from OU812. Take the lyrics out of this one and the guitar and the energy is off the charts. He says just every Eddie trick in the book thrown in there. Number 9, The Dream Is Over from the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album. Punches you right in the face. Has great background vocals as well. Number 10, Balukatherium from Balance. He says, give me more Eddie and Alex all day long. And number 11, he says, Honey Baby Sweetie Doll from A Different Kind of Truth. Total Madness, give me more Eddie. And he says the unappreciated bonus tracks, Won't Get Fooled Again Live from the Live Right Here Right Now album, as well as number 13, Respect the Wind from the Twister soundtrack. That's from Phil Piazza from New Halen, Connecticut. Well, let me tell you something, Phil. My underappreciated, I'm going to give you real quick, just a few. Me Wide's Magic, Can't Get This Stuff No More. You can't get more underappreciated than these 2 songs. I think these 2 songs are gems. I think the MTV debacle and Sammy's departure from the band stepped all over these songs. No one appreciated them. They couldn't get past what was going on. I think It's About Time from Sammy is a great song that's totally underappreciated. Dave's going to fall back on his chair now when I bring up some songs from Van Halen 3, like Year to the Day, From Afar and Once. I think those are great songs, underappreciated. Big River and Beats Working from A Different Kind of Truth. Those are some ones that I feel underappreciated, Dave. What about you?
Well, I think you only asked us for one song, but since you went for bonus points.
I went a little nuts.
I do agree with In a Simple Rhyme. That's unappreciated. I don't know why that's not on the radio. Big fan of Secrets. No secret about that. If you've been listening to the podcast,
That's true.
love that song.
Yep.
I think a lot of the songs on A Different Kind of Truth as a whole are underappreciated. I don't agree with you about Van Halen 3 for the most part.
Of course.
I respect your opinion, of course, but I think you only need to hear once. So that's about it for that. But yeah, those are a few of the songs I think are overlooked in the Van Halen canon.
Right. Okay. Letter number 11 comes from Ralph Krugler. And he says here, "Hey guys, I was just listening to the discussion on the opening of the song Hot for Teacher, and I still have one of the old Simmons electronic toms. Might I stress, I have an explanation. They came with easily swappable computer chips that you could record sounds on. And there was a way you would record on these chips so that it's completely possible for the engineer to mic the car, grab a clean audio, and put it on the chip." Ralph Krugler. What do you think of that, Dave? Do you think that's what happened?
I think that's the best theory I've heard yet.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. That they recorded the sounds from the car and then programmed them in to the Simmons drums.
Yeah.
And man, wish I could ask Al, like, is that how it happened? Did they just record the car straight, or did they record the sounds into the Simmons drums and then did it that way? I mean, that seems likely,
Yeah.
right? I didn't even know you could do that back at the time with the Simmons drums. So I'm thinking that's the best theory I've heard so far.
Okay. Letter number 12 comes from Tyler Shutterfly in Tupelo. Tyler says, hypothetically, would it be best for the preservation and restoration of Van Halen legacy if Al were to sell the rights to the band's merch, masters, vault, if possible? I think it's a crazy idea, but I think that it would give the best hope for the fans to get anything Van Halen related in the future. Wants to know what we think on that. Well, I'll tell you there, Tyler. I think the fans would get more stuff that way for sure, but putting your art in someone else's hands is very tricky business. I don't think Al or Wolfie would ever let that happen. But my question is, does it go to his sons? God forbid something happens to Al or he's gone, or does it go to Wolf in a will? Who knows? It's all kind of weird stuff. But to be honest with you, as young as Wolf is, I would imagine that he's going to be the curator of that. Maybe one day he'll be willing to do something with that. I'm telling you, that day is nowhere near soon. Although, I keep thinking about, in the back of my mind, Dave, and I don't know if you thought about this, but if you remember in Van Halen News about 3 months ago, we talked about Al in that photo with Don Landy at that recording studio. What the fuck was that all about? I keep bringing that up. What was that all about? What do you think, Dave?
I'm hoping it wasn't just putting the Van Halen albums to vinyl.
But would they really dig out Don Landy for that? If Don Landy's being brought in, it seems like it would be something special.
Well, but that's about as special as Van Halen gets, Dave.
I know. What are you going to do?
I don't think by selling the rights to the band, that helps your legacy necessarily.
Yeah.
Because whoever they sell it to, they're not going to be like, oh, well, let's preserve the band's legacy and put out all this old unreleased stuff.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily going to happen. They're going to maximize their investment and try to get the band's music in as many movies, TV shows, or online presence, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're going to Commercials. So will the band's legacy live on in that they'll actually be placing their songs and things like that? Yeah, sure. But if you think we're finally going to get legacy concerts and music and stuff like that and unreleased tracks that we've been dying to get for years because they sold it, no way.
Yeah, that's not, you're right.
No
that's
way.
not where the money is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, not that we're getting that now.
No.
So I don't think the legacy is going to get any better unless, say, like in 10 or 20 years from now, Wolf has an epiphany and or needs the money and then starts releasing this stuff. Which could happen, because you got to remember with Jimmy Page, there was a while there. Led Zeppelin was at the top of their game in the 80s, and there was no Led Zeppelin greatest hits. You were buying their albums, and that was it. And then slowly they started doing some box sets, and then started doing some live albums. And then Jimmy Page really got interested in the legacy of the band, started doing DVDs, and now he's doing books. So eventually it comes around. And, maybe when you're not so much interested in playing or writing music anymore, then you look at the band's legacy and you go, all right, well, that's what I want to focus on and, quite frankly, make my money from.
Yeah, or we'll be doing the podcast in 2042, and I'm going to be like, welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained. It appears the Gary Sharon lost album has been released.
Finally released that Extreme album we talked about all those years ago.
Oh, my God. Remember Twister, Dave? What? Twister? The song that Sammy recorded between us two, well, it finally hit the airwaves this afternoon.
What's your name again?
How about this? Welcome to Dave and Dave Unchained. Dave.
What'd you say? I can't. When did we start getting accents like that?
I don't know. It's great. We're Southern all of a sudden.
I know. Suddenly we get older with Southern accent. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, my God. Let's move on to letter number 13. And this guy fucked us royal. Jeff Shrewsbury. He says, my apologies. I mistakenly referred to the fade out on Big River when I actually meant the fade out on Beats Workin'. This was last podcast. In the letter section, he talks about the fading in of the first song on the first Van Halen album of Running with the Devil and the fading out on the last album on the last song, which he said was Big River, and it was actually Beats Workin'. And my apologies for not fucking checking that, but he says here, sorry for the confusion, but I wanted to write my correction. But Beats Workin' fades out should make more sense to the point I was trying to make. Jeff Shrewsbury. Well, you got us good there, Jeff. You fucked us royal. That's all right. No, Jeff's a good listener and a good supporter. But honest mistake. What are you going to do? It's our fault for not catching it. But what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, no, I think we knew what Jeff meant, even though we called out the wrong song. So, but we get his whole idea about how the band started and how the band ended. So, yeah, your point, even though we got the song details wrong, is a very valid one.
Okay, well, batten down the hatches. This one's a doozy. Letter number 14 comes from Louise Gent from New York. She says, is it true? Could it be? A member posted this on the David Lee Roth group Facebook, and did Ed have the authority to fire Dave, or was it Warner Brothers who had the control? The only thing that makes me think it was not the main reason the band broke up is because of Ted Templeman and the 60 crew who left with Van Halen to be part of Dave's new band. If he had been fired, why would they have supported him? The story I got years ago when I lived next door to Zeke Clark, Ed's guitar tech after Rudy, and it went like this. Dave was a member of this male club called the Jungle Studs. The guys would take month-long trips into the Amazon rainforest, get dropped off in remote locations with nothing more than clothes on their back and a machete. They had to survive for like a month. Then when Dave just returned from his trip, all the construction had finally concluded on Eddie Van Halen's now brand new 5150 studio, and he wanted to get right to work on the next album. Dave said no because he wasn't ready for that, and he was heading back into the Amazon jungle for another month-long vacation. And Ed said, well, if you do go, just stay there because you won't be welcome here anymore. Then Dave fired off the worst low blow imaginable at the moment. Apparently at the time, Ed and Val were trying to make a baby, except Val unfortunately suffered from 2 unexpected miscarriages in attempt. That's when Dave told Eddie, hey, when your wife's ready to have a baby, tell her to come see a real man and I'll make sure she gets one. Laughing at Eddie as he turned and walked away towards his car. That was it. Dave was done. Fired from the band. He didn't quit. That's exactly what really happened. How and why he got thrown out of Van Halen and never quit. That is 100% fact of what really happened and why it's never been told until now. To anyone I offended, I sincerely apologize, but you have to understand. In the end, it all worked out for the best anyway. Louise Gent. Well, that's quite a mouthful, Louise. And I will say, okay, I appreciate you sharing that, but that sounds like a scene from Rocky 3 when Mr. T publicly badgers Rocky by calling out to Adrian to demoralize the Italian stallion. Here's a clip of that.
Hey, woman. Hey, woman. Listen here. Since your old man ain't got no heart, maybe you'd like to see a real man. I bet you stay up late every night dreaming you had a real man, don't you? I tell you what, bring your pretty little self over to my apartment tonight, and I'll show you a real man. You want it, you get it!
I don't know if Dave would be so low class to do something like that. I mean, Val was Eddie's wife. You know, miscarriages are no joke. That's serious stuff. I don't know if that really would be... Dave, what do you make of this? This is weird.
Yeah, I mean, David Lee Roth is a lot of things.
Right, he's not...
But I really don't think he would stoop to that level.
Yeah,
and
I don't
by
think
the
so.
way, if he did,
Yeah.
after the band broke up, I really don't think Ed would have had a problem calling him out on that.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He never indicated anything to that effect.
Yeah.
So, but this is the problem. Like, somebody says, you know, who's kind of like in that Van Halen inner circle, says,
Yeah.
look, this is how it went down.
Right.
And so, you know, you trust this person because they haven't lied to you about anything else.
Right.
But it's like, I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. Because, again, I think Eddie would have just thrown him under the bus and called him out on that if that was the case.
Oh, totally. I don't know if that's forgivable at that point. Letter number 15 comes from Air Force J in Half Moon Bay, and he says here, while I am a fan of Sam, I must admit I was even a little ticked off when, prior to A Different Kind of Truth's release, he tried to belittle the idea of using old demos and old ideas for the record. Using old ideas is common in the music industry. I did want to comment on your statement about Ed's concern over the lukewarm reception to his new tracks released off the Best of Both Worlds Greatest Hits package. Following Van Halen 3 with a Greatest Hits album, no new songs on Van Halen 3, by the way, seemed strange. Who was the target audience? I really wish Ed would have just worked with the band and a producer to release a full album of new music. Why give the fans what they already have? Release a new album. I also want to say to Dave M., Tattoo is not a bad song. It just wasn't the best choice as a lead single. Agreed. She's the Woman or maybe Stay Frosty would have been better choices to introduce A Different Kind of Truth. Air Force J and Half Moon Bay. Well, I will tell you, Sam tried to downplay the Van Halen with Roth album, A Different Kind of Truth, because he was afraid of his legacy getting wiped away by Dave returning to the band's fold. For sure, it's definitely a perfect last record, and Sam was going to shit all over it regardless. Best of Both Worlds. Apparently, from what I have read and studied, they wanted to do a full new album, but Ed was a bit discombobulated at the time, and 3 songs, all they could get done in time for when the tour was coming. It was sort of a tight, 6 months that they had to get that finished. I think Best of Both Worlds was really in lieu of the Best of Volume 2. They also needed to, have some sort of product to tour on. Back in 2004, that was the case. If that was today, they would have released It's About Time as a single, and that would have been it. There wouldn't even been a product. No one's concerned about that nowadays when they tour. Maybe they throw out a new single, especially a legacy band. They're not so concerned about having a brand new album. Some people are, but not everybody is. But back then, you had to have some product to roll with. And that's what they went with, because they didn't put out a Best of Volume 2. They figured, you know what, let's just do a whole, retrospective 2-disc package. And they still fucked it up because they put those live tracks on there from Sam, and that didn't make sense. And they really should have had 1-disc Sam and 1-disc Dave. Instead, they mixed it all up. That was kind of weird. Yeah, Tattoo was chosen, and we said this on that podcast, because it was easily the most poppy-sounding tune, and I really think they were going for that 1984 formula where they had Jump, and then they had Panama. Obviously I'll Wait came second, but if you look at it, Tattoo is way closer to Jump in the sense that it's like a poppy commercial kind of tune, and then you got She's the Woman, it's more like Panama, like the meat and potatoes rocker type of thing. So what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I know we've spoken about Tattoo before, and why they picked it wasn't necessarily a good choice. We agree that She's the Woman would have been a better choice, or Blood and Fire would have been a good choice, right?
Right.
Regarding Best of Both Worlds,
yeah.
You put it very politely, but Ed was in no shape to do a whole album.
No.
And the reason the band got together, quite frankly, was for a tour.
Yep.
And if you believe the rumors, it was because Alex needed the money after a divorce. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what the rumor was. Anyway, but either way, whatever they needed the money for, they definitely did it for the money.
Yeah, for sure. Letter number 16 comes from Steve Ustick from West Michigan. He said, I discovered that the fade-in chord at the beginning of Where Have All the Good Times Gone off Diver Down is the last chord at the end of Secrets played in reverse. Do you know this? Might you have any insight as to why this was done or what the connections are to these two songs? I mean, it's cool, but such an unusual way to start an album, especially since there are two songs are not in the same key signature. Curious of your thoughts. Steve Ustick, West Michigan. Well, here's a clip of Where Have All the Good Times Gone coming in. And here's the outro of Secrets. Well, to be honest with you, Steve, it's not the same thing. It's just sort of a cymbal fading in and out. That's what's really throwing you there. I do not think it's the same clip played in reverse, Dave. What do you think?
You're wrong. It is.
Are you serious?
Yes.
You know for a fact?
Yes, it is. Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I known about it, I don't know, maybe about 10 years or so. I remember I read about it. I forget where I read it. I read about it in passing somewhere, and I did not realize it until I heard it. But yes, the intro to Where Have All the Good Times Gone is indeed the ending of Secrets backwards. Why they did it, I don't know. I think they just thought it was a cool thing to do, cool little studio trick to start off the album. But yes, that is true. That is fact.
Where did you get that from?
You know, Dave, I forget. I just remember one year for my love for Diver Down, I think it was like the 30th anniversary. I wrote, what's to love about Diver Down?
Right, yeah.
And one of the things I had just learned about the album was this little factoid. And don't ask me where I read it, but it was in some interview somewhere.
Okay.
But yeah, that's just one of those, another little cool thing about Diver Down. And I thought we discussed it on a podcast prior, but my memory is like Swiss cheese these days, so I'm not sure.
That's true. Okay, letter number 17 comes from Robert Gonzalez, also known as Bobby G, from Costa Mesa, California. He says here, in your esteemed opinions, who wrote the better reunion song? Hagar with It's About Time or Dave's Blood and Fire? Robert Gonzalez, Bobby G, Costa Mesa, California. My vote is for Blood and Fire, but I like both. What do you think, Dave?
Man, that's a tough one because lyrically, they're both good reunion songs, and musically, they're both good reunion songs. I think Blood and Fire gets the edge, but it's very, very close.
Okay, cool. Letter number 18, Dave, comes from Eric Torbeck, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. And he says here, what's up, guys? I am completely invested in the Panama Full Blast top-down controversy, and I have to admit, I cannot believe I missed all these years. I've listened to Panama Live so much in the past 2 months. It's incredible. For what it's worth, here's my take. You are 100% correct. The original Dave lyric is Full Blast without a question on the album, and numerous 1984 bootlegs. Beginning in 1986, Sam changes it to foot tapping, and my guess is Sammy didn't bother to learn the lyrics and sang it from memory the same way he did all the cover songs. And he was close enough, much like he would sing Ass instead of Back and Jump. I even noticed in viewing a few bootlegs that Sam at one point would point to his actual foot tapping as he sang the line, so it's clearly foot tapping. My guess with Gary is, being the professional that he is, he took the time to research the actual lyrics, which would explain his use of Full Blast, and most cover versions of the song have Full Blast. I am completely stumped as to why Dave started singing foot tapping in 1986 himself and never went back. The only explanation I have is Dave must have seen some of the 5150 tour shows, and he too sung it from memory, but now he had foot tap in line because he had recently heard it from that. Over the years, foot tapping has just become the lyric associated with the two guys who sang it the most. It's obviously slipped by everyone, and we never even noticed this until now. Roth is the only one who knows, and I'm sure he is not giving any answers. And no one tells Sam he just might want songwriting credits. I know this is longer than my standard, but I hope it continues my streak. Rock on. Eric Torbeck, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. All right, Eric. A little long on that one, Eric, but that's all right. We'll let you slide because of your good credit in the past. Okay, so yeah, the weirdest part, in my opinion, is that David Lee Roth sang full blasting Top Down on the 1984 tour, and then when he went solo, he started singing Foot Tappin'. That's the strangest part of the whole thing for me. I cannot get over that. Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, that is the strangest part. And that's where this whole thing started, because that's how Sammy was singing the song.
Right.
So everyone was like, why is David Lee Roth singing it the way Sammy is? And it wasn't necessarily because that's the way Sammy was singing it, but that's probably the way the sheet music showed it. And yeah, it just boggles the mind that Dave decided to go back to the sheet music and sing it that way, as opposed to the way he sang on the album, but I guess maybe he was just so high at the time that he couldn't remember which way he was singing it.
Yeah,
so
who the fuck knows?
That's how it happened.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Letter number 19 comes from, here he is.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
It's Midwest fucking Ron. That's right. It's Midwest fucking Ron, and he's hiding in the shadows, and he's coming out with his knife to stab us right in the back. And he starts here. There's been some discussion about the band's name with Mammoth and the name of the album. At a mid-March show, Wolfgang refers to the band just as Mammoth. And he also said that when he went to see the show, the merch for Mammoth and Dirty Honey were kept separate, and there were separate lines for each, which he found kind of unusual. He also wanted to discuss us calling there being a dead time in the band. In your Different Kind of Truth segment, you implied that there was dead period in the band between the end of the 2008 tour and the announcement of A Different Kind of Truth at the end of 2011. You may have forgotten about the Australian Soundwave Revolution Festival in 2011, in which Van Halen was supposed to play 5 shows before the thing got canceled. There were also a ton of new album in the works rumors in 2010. 2009 gave us Guitar Hero. While many things have been quiet over the years, they weren't dead. Now, in terms of album sales, he looked up the album sales. He has, I don't know how these numbers were obtained, but they don't include all the released albums, but they were up-to-date numbers for the top 10 highest-selling Van Halen albums of all time. Number 10, Fair Warning, at 4.1 million. Number 9, Van Halen's Balance, at 4.9 million. Number 8, For Unlawful Call of Knowledge, 4.95 million. Number 7, Women and Children First, 5.4 million. Diver Down, 5.7 million. Number 5, OU812, 5.8 million. Number 4, Van Halen 2, 7.25 million. Number 3, 5150 at 8.8 million. Number 2, in 1984, 15.5 million. And Van Halen 1 at 15.6 million. So that's what he has here. You also want to correct us that in the March news, you mentioned that Mammoth WVH was scheduled to perform at the Louder Than Life Festival in Louisville, Kentucky. You failed to mention that just like last year, Mammoth WVH was scheduled and then canceled. And he also wanted to reprimand us, or especially me, actually, for mispronouncing Gary's last name from Sammy's band and also from Boston. It's not Gary Phil, it's Gary Peel. Midwest fucking Ron. He's always looking to slap the wrist, Dave, and I swear he gets off on it. So number 1, address the Wolfgang situation. Wolfgang calls the band Mammoth. He uses the WVH, very much like my partner Dave says, because he has to do it legally. The question is the album called Mammoth? Because if you look on the spine of the vinyl, it says Mammoth. Okay? So I'm wondering if that was the name. Number 2, I'm sorry, but a canceled festival appearance, a video game, and a few rumors equates to dead time, in my opinion. That means there's years of no action going on in the band, so especially after the band had just revamped, getting back together with Roth. This was all due to Ed's setbacks, grappling with his alcoholism. Number 3, the album sales. Seems a little bit off to me. How is it that the For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album and the Balance album are so close in sales? That doesn't make sense to me. I think For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was bigger. The Diver Down album should be higher. OU812 seems very high, and had 5150 done an anniversary edition, maybe that could have bumped that album into diamond status. Who the hell knows? In terms of Mammoth's cancellation of Louder Than Life, I did not know that. All right, so you can get me on that one for sure. I'll give it to you.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
In terms of Gary's last name, I didn't know that's the way it's pronounced. You want to spank me again, Ron? There you go.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
And I know you love it. So there you go, Ron. Midwest fucking Ron coming out of the shadows again. He shivered me, Dave. He shivered me right in the side. Now I'm sure you're going to come here to his rescue. Go ahead.
That's right. Thank you, Ron. Your check's in the mail.
Oh, there you go. Letter number 20. He wants to get to his favorite part of the night, and we've reached to that point, and I want you to know I've done this in record time. Letter number 20 comes from Paul Martin Woods. He said, in the mailbag, you played the sound of an engine idling, supposedly used at the beginning of Hot for Teacher. That engine sounded to me like a V8. Eddie's 1972 Lamborghini Miura S is a V12, which is a completely different sound. At idling, very smooth. So to me, it doesn't add up. If they used a different car, then yes, there may be some validity to it, but the Miura, it most certainly was not. The engines have totally different sounds. Fantastic pod, guys. Thanks always. EVH forever. Yeah, Paul, I'm not a car guy. However, I would imagine that a high-end Lamborghini would be a cleaner sound. What boggles the mind is basically, like I said, that Ed in his Smithsonian interview said that they used Lamborghini for Panama. Why would they use it again for Hot for Teacher? That doesn't make sense to me. It's so strange, Dave. What do you think?
Regarding the car they would use, or the fact that they just recorded it for the song?
Just that they would use the Lamborghini twice.
Oh, well, like I said before, like the first one was obvious and the second one was a little more subtle. I don't know.
I'm telling you, I think there's something strange there. I think you were onto it more with that chip thing.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I think they programmed it into the drums. That's my guess.
That's my guess. So.
That's this month's guess.
This month's guess. That's where we're at. Well, that wraps up the mailbag segment. And we are on to our anniversary special where we talk with the lead singer of Private Life, Kelly Breznik, followed by our interview with G.E. Smith, the guitarist from the Saturday Night Live band from the 80s, when he jammed with Eddie Van Halen in 1987 on the song Stompin' at 8H. That's all coming up next. Take a listen.
Edward learned classical piano, and Alex, as far as I know, was always involved in the drums. Their father is a professional musician, and Mr. Van Halen plays clarinet on one of the songs on the new record coming up, which, incidentally, the name of the new album is Diver Down, and Mr. Van Halen plays clarinet on a song called Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now, so you'll get a real taste of the roots. I, on the other hand, have no musical influences whatsoever, and that explains my position.
I just want to wish my podcast partner, Dave Marconi, a happy 6th anniversary. There's no other man I'd rather share a microphone with than Baby, It's You.
Author Greg Renoff is back with a new book, Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music. The new biography of the record producer Ted Templeman, who went on to produce Van Halen, the Doobie Brothers, Van Morrison, Aerosmith, Sammy Hagar, and more. The book, which runs $19.95, and it's currently available at Amazon.com. From the man who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, A Platinum Producer's Life and Music, written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 at Amazon.com. Order it today.
Hey, everybody, this is Sass Jordan, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
If you would like to send us a letter asking a question or making a statement or whatever you'd like to say, you can send it to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
Need a laugh? Check out the Funny How Comedy Podcast, which focuses on upbeat conversations with legendary comedians. It's free on Spreaker and iTunes. Check us out on Facebook at Funny How Comedy Podcast, on Twitter at Funny How Podcast, on Instagram at Funny How Comedy Podcast, or email us at funnyhowcomedypodcast@gmail.com.
Wake up, if there's something you want to do it right now. Don't wait till tomorrow.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a great guest this evening. She is the lead singer of the former band Private Life, which was produced by Eddie Van Halen. Her name is Kelly Breznik, as you know her from the album. She is now Kelly Breznik McLeod. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you. Just wanted to let everybody know, obviously, you came out with the 2 Private Life albums in the late 80s and early 90s. Just to start out, how did Private Life initially form?
So here's how it went down. I was living in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I was in a band called Private Life, and we were up playing at a club. I was 18. Valerie Bertinelli's parents lived in Shreveport, so they would come home for holidays, she and Ed. And her brother, Pat, was a fan of ours, and he brought him out to see us. They came in, and they came back. They sat in with us. First of all, they had their bodyguard ask if it was okay if they came to meet me, which I thought was very, yeah. Yes. Because let's remember, I have an Eddie Van Halen poster on my ceiling when I go home where I'm still living at my mom and dad's.
Right.
So did Valerie.
I'm a huge fan. Yeah. So it was a magical night, and they came back the next night because we were playing the next night too. And we played pool till 5 a.m, and we just hit it off immediately. And they respected what we were doing. I mean, I was just starting to write. He said, well, so that most of the songs, I know you only wrote a few of them. You got to write. You got to write. And I remember thinking, boy, that this is one thing I'm going to listen to. I'm paying attention to this.
Right.
Because he had heard one song. He's like, you can write, And when you hear that from Ed Van Halen, you take it and you go with it. I did that. I would write and send him demos. And I guess it was about 3 years before my daddy bought us an old van, and we piled in it, I don't know how many of us, roadies and everyone, and we moved to California. When I look back, I can't believe I had the what's to do that.
Right. Sure.
When you're young, you'll do anything, I
That's
guess.
the truth. Were you intimidated by Ed, or were you kind of very casual with him?
You know what? That's a really good question. No one's ever asked me that. And I'll tell you, I was not at all by him or Valerie, and I think that's why that was part of what made them comfortable. Neither one of us felt, I think there was a mutual respect. It wasn't just them coming up and meeting us. They were attracted to what my band was doing, and I think that we were so comfortable. I mean, 2 nights in a row, they give me their address to send stuff. Who does that?
Right.
They trusted me, and there's something to say for that. And I'm one of those people that believes in a gut feeling, so they did too. Yeah, we moved out there, and I say there because now I'm in Louisiana, just not to confuse anything.
Sure.
Visiting.
In terms of being 18, I mean, that's so young. So, I mean, it's like being shot out of a cannon at 18 years old. So how did you handle that just from a maturity standpoint?
You know what? I am a little stick of dynamite. I'm tough, but I didn't realize how tough. And I wanted it so bad, and I had to grow up overnight. I had no girlfriends except for Jen and the band. That was the only girl around. When Private Life ended and I was in this weird part of my life, I was in shell. I didn't know how to make a girlfriend. It was like I had to learn a whole other way to live because I was in this weird part where I wasn't playing music. It's weird how it all unfolded, but I eventually was able to fall back into a flow.
What time of year was this when Ed came to see you? What year was it? Do you remember the specific year?
Let's see. So I moved out in 85.
Okay.
So it must have been 83. I think 83.
It was that early? It was before Jump came out?
Yes. Yes, it was. Because I remember listening to Jump, riding in my car, listening to it like I pulled over in my Volkswagen going, oh my God, this is different. What is this? Yeah, I was still here. I eventually lived with Ed and Val for a while because he was and she is the most generous human beings you'll ever meet. And I needed a place to stay. We were all broke, Jen and I lived with them for a while. And I remember one night we were playing the piano and she came in, she goes, please just, whatever you do, don't play Jump. Like, I remember being like, bop, 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 bop. She goes, you don't know how long I've been listening to that. How I listened to it. And I'm like, well, that's a first world problem, Valerie. Like, that's okay. Look what it did for you. It was just surreal to hear, wow, so that's how that came down, from that lick. And you would just play it over and over and over and over and over and it turned into a song.
So I have to ask the question because it's kind of sort of around that time period. Did Ed ever ask you if you wanted to be the lead singer of Van Halen?
Well, the thing is, it was played around with. Like Patti Smythe came and sang, she was a contender. And it was never directly, there was never anything set up for it. We talked about it in code. And it just never came to play. And quite honestly, I think I might have just folded on the spot. As comfortable as we were, that's too heavy a shoes to step into, I think. I don't know.
Well, it's very male-driven.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's true. Now, also, how would you describe your relationship with Jennifer Blakeman, who was the keyboard player and the background singer in the band? How long did you guys know each other? Were you the original seed for the band?
I was, and we needed a female keyboard player in order to get gigs because we had to have a female in the band for this particular gig we wanted in Japan. And I didn't want a girl in the band. I was like, no, I want all guys. And my drummer found her, and we ended up being best friends. We were really, really close. It was really great to have some estrogen along the way going through all this. And we were great friends. We're not in touch anymore, which is a shame. She's in New York, and I'm not, and I guess that doesn't help.
How long was Private Life a band before you hooked up with Ed?
Not long, probably a year and a half, 2 years. You know, it was this thing. I mean, musicians in that town, yeah, it was a turnover. You would have a different guitar player from one gig to the next sometimes because people would get, their egos would get swollen and they'd go, I'm going to another band because you play too loud. You know, I mean, it was one of those. So we were pretty solid for a good year and a half, and it didn't end up being those players actually in the band. So. Okay. That he saw that night.
So how many players changed out to when you did the album?
A couple of them did move out with me, but come album time, it was all new players.
Except for Jen.
Jen, yes, correct. Wait a minute. You know what? God, that's a good question, Dave. I don't think Jen was with us that night. I can't remember.
Wow.
I really can't.
In terms of living with Ed and Val, when did you live with them? During what time period?
It was during the first record because I remember we would have coffee and then walk out and record. That was really cool.
The first record came out in what, 88?
Yeah.
And so now, obviously, there's a lot of years in between there. So what went on for all that time? Was Ed sort of working on the band in between all the Van Halen stuff?
Yes, he was. And we were flat broke. So we were all, when we first moved out there, we all crammed into one apartment. The most adorable apartment with green shag carpet everywhere. And we lived there on a wing and a prayer. We played gigs. We played for a solid, what is that, through at least 2.5 years. We would go, Bakersfield, all the circuit that bands, and we'd learn all these cover songs to try to sneak our songs in there with it to make some money. It was tough, but it was really good because it gave us some good chops. Once me and Jen had all that in our background, I met up with Danny Johnson, who's also from Shreveport, and we played kind of rivals across the street from each other many times. One night I was visiting Shreveport and so was he because we were both in LA at the time. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, this is what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, what do you do? You want to play guitar? And boom, him and Joe Davis, Danny was with Alcatraz. He left the project and came over and we hit it off writing wise, it was just like water flowing out of a tap.
Wow.
The second we started writing together. And Ed went, there you go, bingo. Now you found someone to write with, get writing. Danny and I and Jay did some writing with us as well. We were the core of the writers.
Would you do demos and would you show them to Ed and he would critique them? Or
Yeah.
That's how it would work?
Yeah, he would listen to them and he'd either toss it across the room. He was one to tell you like it was, which I loved.
Right.
You know, when he said to me, Last Heartbeat, which Danny and I wrote, he goes, I love that effing song and I wish I would have wrote it.
Oh, wow.
What do you do with that? Did he really say that? But it's things like that as a songwriter, as a musician, you question yourself every minute of every day. No matter what you do, you question yourself. I'm so privileged to have someone like him say things like that to me. And I savor all that. And I take that with me every day.
Wow.
Till this day.
Yeah. That's incredible. Now, in terms of clicking, was he into the sound of the band or did he want to shape it or change it or alter it?
He did not want to change one thing. It feels weird me saying this, but he loved my voice. And he goes, chicks don't sing like that. And he knew I wasn't kooky. And for him, someone that he really loved their voice and wasn't kooky, well, let's do something. And he's really picky with music. You know, he didn't listen to a lot of music. He loved Danny's playing. He loved what we wrote. I mean, he's on the backgrounds on both records. He came in and would sing backgrounds with us.
Really?
Yeah. He was into it. It was so great to see him into it. Producing was a new thing for him, and he really loved it.
Did you record everything at 5150?
The first record we did, and then the second one we did some stuff at 5150, but once Ted Templeman came on with the second record, we were at 1-on-1.
Okay, gotcha. Would Ed's influence come upon Danny at all with the guitar, or is he leaving Danny alone?
You know what? There's an interview of the two of them where someone said that, and Eddie goes, fuck, he influences me.
Wow.
If you look, you'll find many times he said, he's like, God, Alan Holdsworth, Danny Johnson. You know, he just really loved his playing. And no wonder, Danny's such a freaking great guitar player.
Right.
He really is.
And how would you describe the sound you were going for? What was your particular direction?
Well, we were melodic rock. That was what I thought made us stand out, because there was melody to our songs, although some of them were like big-time rockers. And it's hard to put melody with rock. That's why I couldn't get arrested as a female rock singer back. But that's the other thing we had against us. If you look at the dates, there was Lita Ford, and that was it. Our Heart. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It was bad timing for us, but...
In terms of getting signed to Warner Brothers, how did that whole thing come about? Did Eddie present it to them, or what was the whole...
He did. Once we had an album's worth of material, and he gave us no warning. He said, Lenny Waronker and, a couple of the guys from Warner, they're going to come over to 5150 and we're going to play them 3 songs. I go, okay. He goes, and you know what that means? I go, no, what does that mean?
Oh, wow.
Well, I'm trying to get you signed. And I go, okay. So we weren't allowed to go in, and him and, God, it's been so long, I'm trying to remember the names, Lenny and him and Mo.
And
Austin.
Mo Austin, right.
They go in, they come out, just the friendlies, yeah, but great to meet you, da, da, da. And Lenny Waronker said, well, I sure hope you would like to come aboard Warner Brothers. We'd love to have you. I'm like, that's not happening. Something's wrong here. How can that be happening?
Do you remember what year that was?
That was 87.
Okay.
86 or 87.
Okay, so that's after 5150 came out or before?
They were very close together. But we toured the OU812 album.
No, of course. Yeah,
so
I know. I'm going to get to that.
That gives you an idea of the timeline.
Absolutely. So now, in terms of the band's name, Private Life, where did that come from? What's the symbolization?
You know, I wish there was a really groovy story behind it, but there's just not. We were called that because, like I said, the rotating musician train was crazy. And I was in a band with a fella, Tom McCullough, great guy, great guitar player. And he actually came up with the name. And the current lineup, we were Private Life. And then people started quitting. And then all of a sudden, no one was in the band anymore. So I thought, well, we'll call it Private Life for now. When we sat around the table with Ed one night, he goes, okay, what's your name going to be? And we're all going around. And when it came to him, we were all putting in our names. And he wrote down on his piece of paper, Private Life. And I'm like, really? Like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, that's who you are. Your Private Life.
Well, you had that name prior, right?
We did, but, I was thinking we need to come up with some groovy new name.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
But he's like, I like it.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Well, Ed was always a believer in keeping the band name. Even when the players change, the band name stays the same.
That's right.
So.
I never thought of it that way, but you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good name. Now, also, what would you say he brought out in the band? Was it the pushing of the writing, or what do you think it was?
Well, for me, he told me like it was. He told me in the beginning, look, you got to toughen up. You got to have a tough skin. People are going to chew you up and spit you out. And you got balls, but you're going to have to get bigger ones. And you can't listen to people. You got to trust yourself. And most of all, he said to me, you're a writer. You're a writer, and I don't think you believe it. You need to believe it. And that was huge for me. So for me, that's what he did. And for the band, I think, again, he was just so positive. It just bled over into every meeting we had, every rehearsal we had. He was just so positive about it. He genuinely loved it. He wasn't just doing it to dick around and produce a band. He really loved the music.
Did you ever get to jam with him?
Yeah. And we opened the club Cabo Wabo.
Oh, okay.
We were the band for the night. We were like the house band.
Nice.
And God, that was such a fun night. I mean,
wow.
You can imagine there was everybody and their brother was there. We jammed with them that night. I mean, but we would jam with them. We would just jam sitting in the house. But like live, that was a memorable one. Sam and I worked out a couple songs we did together, and Ed got up and jammed. And then one night on the OU812 tour, this wasn't a jam, but it was fun. all the wives of the Van Halen players, who I loved, well, the wives at the time, you know how things go, but we all got together, me, Jen, and then Valerie, Kelly, and we put on cut-off shorts and cowboy hats, and tied up our flannel shirts, and without Van Halen knowing, when they played, "Come on, baby, finish what you started," we, behind them, started walking across with straw in our mouth, like doing, like walking really slow with each other. And everyone starts cheering really loud, and they're all looking at each other, and they look behind and see us, and it was such a great moment.
Oh,
that's I knew someone had that video, but
where was that at? Where were you?
Remember? God, I don't remember.
Okay.
Jennifer would remember. She was good with that kind of thing.
So now, Private Life toured with Van Halen, like you said, as the opening act on the OU812 tour. What was that whole experience like?
Unbelievable. All the way going up to the first date, Ed was like, listen, don't be offended. Almost every opening act gets booed off at some point. We haven't had a lot of good, but don't worry about it.
Except us, who opened for Black Sabbath and played better than they did. They're like the only band. You know, it's so funny. We used to always joke. Ed was a superstar like the minute he stepped on stage. You know, he had a platinum album from his first album and every album onward almost. I mean, the band just skyrocketed from day one. So it's almost like he doesn't know anything different than being completely successful, which is really hysterical. How was the audiences to you? Were they nice?
Unbelievable. Like, I remember, well, first of all, I have a moment etched in my mind. It was the first show on the tour, and I think it was maybe Norfolk, Virginia. We'd already sound checked, and I just went and sat out on the stage, and I'm looking out there, and I'm going, this is huge. Like, do I have the lung power to even run up and down the stage? This is not like a little bitty.
It's not a club, yeah.
And Ed came walking up, you know, on his guitar. Anytime you saw him, he had the guitar going, not amped, but just kind of. And he sat down and he put the guitar down and he put his arm around me and he goes, "You got this, kid." I think he just knew. He knew I was sitting there going, "What is, you know?"
Sure.
And that's all I needed to hear.
How
and
long?
I don't say it boasting. I did. It just happened. It just, man, it was just, I went out and when I saw people singing words to songs that I wrote, and I'm like, how do they even know the music? How does this work?
That's awesome.
Did you have interactions with any of the other band members, and what do you remember about them?
Well, Michael, we'd see him. He was he's a big lake boat person, so we'd see him out there, but not really. And Sam was always around while we were on tour, you know, in little spurts, because everybody got along then, which was great. I wish they could have continued to get along. I don't know anything about all that.
Yeah.
I don't want to know anything about it. But,
well, you know enough to know what happens in bands. It's a very tricky situation. You know, bands are marriages that are 4 or 5 ways. It's very hard to keep together, very hard to keep everybody happy.
I don't know. Are you guys married? I have one husband. I can't imagine having 3 more of them. You know, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
God, but
it's a lot.
But it's sick. You can't stop. I'm still doing it. You know.
That's true. That's true. So now, in terms of getting used to the arenas and the big places, how long did it take you to get your feet wet and you felt like, you know, really excited? When did the nerves go away?
Well, for me, and this is how it's been from day one, even when I went on in preschool and did, you know, Shirley Temple, Good Ship Lollipop. Once I got the first line out, it's like ham time. Come on, Breznik. That's just in my blood. I used to sing in the mirror with my brush and sing Elvis Presley's "In the Ghetto." You ever heard that song?
Yeah, of course. In the Ghetto.
In the Ghetto. I mean, I was such a freak at like 6 years old singing "In the Ghetto" with my brush. My parents knew I was going to do something a little bizarre, and
absolutely.
I kind of did, didn't I?
That's great, though. It's great. And now, in terms of how long was the OU812 tour that you were on?
Not long enough. I think it was like 50 gigs. And that was it. And then they were ready. They're like, record 2, get in there and get going. And we did.
Wow. Yeah, they keep you going, right? How did you get treated by Warner Brothers? Do you feel like they properly promoted the album? Or like, how do you feel it all went with the first album?
Here's what I think. And I've always been nervous to say it to anyone. We weren't promoted.
Okay.
We weren't. That's all there is to it. And I think in hindsight, it's because they thought, Ed produced them. We don't got to do anything.
Oh.
I think maybe that was a big part of it. I really do. Between that and female rock bands were just not the jam back then.
Okay.
We were literally at the exact wrong time to have a female rock band. In addition to, Ed, it'll sell just because of Ed's name. I think they wrote that, and it makes me sad because I think if they had treated us like a band, nothing to do with Ed, let's just look at it as it's a new band that we got to sink a little dough into. And, I mean, they did sink dough into us as far as we made 2 incredible videos, but you can't stop there.
Right.
And depend on Ed's name.
Did anything change in terms of promotion between the first album and the second album?
No, because I think they went, shit, that one didn't go with his name. Let's see if this one will. And they just gave up. And I think, again, a shame. It's weird because any time I revisit with interviews or go back to people, there was such an incredible fan base. And we didn't have a lot of negative stuff around us. Like, I think it just didn't get out there. If we'd only had cell phones then, social media, can you imagine how much more we could have done?
And you could have also
mattered about the record company.
Right. Now, did you ever go to Ed or even Ted Templeman, because he was producing, I think it was your second album, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And did you ever go to them and be like, hey, look, the record company isn't really promoting us. Is there anything you guys can do to, like, give them a little push?
No, I didn't, because I was young and I didn't think that was something I could even do. Now, in my older body right now, I would be there way before, the next guy. But then I felt so honored and privileged. And I'm going to go and say that I have an opinion here. I was young, in my early 20s. I thought, well, this is just, I got to just do what they say.
Now, you worked with Don Landy and Ed on the first album. You worked with Ted Templeman and Ed on the second. What was the vibe like in making the record? Was it different? Was it similar?
It was pretty similar. I mean, with Don was the perfect person to cut my teeth on recording. I'd never even walked into a recording studio, by the way.
Okay.
First time I'd ever even seen one. Don was so laid back that, again, I was immediately not nervous, even in a situation like that that's so intimidating. He was perfect for the first record. And then Ted, I mean, you meet him, and 5 minutes later, you're like best friends. And let's keep in mind the relationship he and Ed had. They dug each other. They'd worked together, so they had a groove going that was really neat. So both experiences, for me, were just couldn't have been better.
What happened to Don? Where did he go?
I don't know. I think do you guys know? I think he passed away, didn't he?
No, he didn't die.
No, I think he's still alive.
Yeah, he's alive, but it's just at that. Yeah, he is. Now, I'm talking about at that time. It's interesting because even after Van Halen's album OU812, which also came out in 1988, right after that, he completely dropped out. Like, no one heard from Don.
I wasn't privy to any of that.
Okay.
And I feel bad for saying I thought he passed away, because I honestly thought he did.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
Someone in that camp did, but I'm not sure who. But
no problem.
No, I wasn't involved in anything that had to do with Don coming or going, so I'm not sure.
And how would you compare the two Private Life albums? How would you say the similarities, the differences? Which one do you prefer?
I like the production on the second one, because that's where I did have a voice, and I went in and I said, I want to sound bigger. I want to sound more like some of these rock records that are coming out. Like, I did have a voice there. The first one, I still love to this day, because it's who we were, and it's very raw and timeless. Was it production-wise? Was it big with huge drum? No, it wasn't. But I think it's what it was supposed to be. So I actually wouldn't change it. But I do love how bringing Ted on and me getting a little bit of a voice in there and going, can we make this like rock more? Because we didn't even know terminology then. I was so green.
Yeah.
But that's the differences for me.
In terms of Jay Davis and Lenny Campanaro, they were on album number 1, and then they weren't on album number 2. So what happened there?
Well, as we spoke earlier, a couple of my husbands decided to go. It's just, it's Lenny Campanaro, the original drummer. Love him. Great guy. Ed just wanted something different on drums.
Okay.
That's all there was to it.
Okay.
And Lenny was late. We slid him in there right before we recorded.
Okay.
So in Lenny's defense, he kind of came in at the end, and that was probably hard for him. then we found Chris Frazier, and Ed was like, and again, this is when I said I wanted more rock, and we felt like Chris was like, he's such a heavy, such a hard player, and he's such a great drummer. Have you seen him with Foreigner yet?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's great.
So great.
Yeah, absolutely.
He added to that request of mine of, I want to rock.
Right.
I want to rock. And Jay left because Jay just was not happy. That's all. I just thought he just wasn't happy. And we found Steve, and Steve was awesome.
So now, when you went from album number 1 to album number 2, did you get any notes from Warner Brothers or Ed, like, we want to change this up, we want to go in a different direction? Did they give you some sort of direction or guides or notes as to what they want for the second album?
Not one.
Really?
Not one. The only beef, they picked different singles than I had in mind.
Okay.
And Ed, too. Ed wanted Last Heartbeat.
Okay.
And they literally picked Put Out the Fire, which I think, I don't know. I love Put Out the Fire, but I think Last Heartbeat, pretty damn hooky.
So you agreed with Ed. You thought it should have been Last Heartbeat.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
So how is producing with Ted different than producing with Don?
Ted talked. Don's quiet, right? Don's just a chill guy. It was more Ed on that record. Don was just kind of quiet, but cool and collected, and it was his vibe that made it great. Ted is the opposite, So he gave more cues. He was more involved. He and Ed, again, had a groove with working together in an artist-producer sense.
Now, how did you see their relationship at that time? And the reason I ask is because the last time Ted had produced Van Halen was the 1984 album, which was a few years before. And then he went to produce David Lee Roth's first full-length solo album. And I don't think Ed was too happy. It was almost like a defection, a betrayal. And so now
it was always, oh, you're in his sandbox. Oh, now you're in his sandbox. It's all the same stuff. It's like life. It's like an office 9 to 5. Like, you went to the copier without telling me, and you're going to fight with people that you're up each other's ass creating. There's no way around it. And you're going to be so mad that you literally don't do projects with him for a minute, and then all of a sudden you go, shit, we really had some. All right, whatever. Let's work together again. I mean, that's the way it was with bands, members, and then same with producers.
Who did you tour with behind the second album? Obviously, Van Halen wasn't touring at that time, so who did you tour with?
We toured with Bullet Boys and Eddie Money. Those were both great tours, too.
We love Eddie Money.
Yeah, we're big fans.
Loved Eddie Money. Loved his band members. It was such a great crew. We were treated really nicely on that tour.
That wasn't his acoustic tour he was doing, was it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we'd have to look at the year. So it was probably 90.
90. Has to be 90. Dave, the acoustic thing, that was like 92. So it was the album. It was the album prior. Yeah.
It's interesting that you toured with the Bullet Boys because Ted Templeman produced them, and they got some criticism for being a Van Halen sound-alike band.
Yeah, well, it just so happened the stars aligned. We were both on Warner Brothers at the same time, and Warner liked to put bands out together on tour with each other.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, right, it just made sense. Here it is. So let's throw them together.
In terms of the band, how did you do commercially with the first album? How did you do commercially with the second?
Elaborate.
In terms of sales and success with the singles, which one did better?
Almost gold on the first one, and the second one, I don't even know the number, but it just didn't sell because we didn't go out with Van Halen again.
Right.
And again, there was just no promotion, and there was no social media. I was green. If there was anything I could have done about it, I didn't. I kind of just cried in my drink and moved on.
And how did things end with the band, like with Ed, and how did it all come to a head?
Well, Ed was crushed.
Really?
He was crushed, and he wasn't crushed as a producer. That's what I want people to know about him. He didn't give a flying F what happened with that. He loved us so much, and he loved our music. He was crushed for us.
Wow.
God, it makes sad. I can hardly even say it. People don't know, because when they think Ed Van Halen, they think of him on the stage, like the guy that went out there, blew everybody's mind, but he was an amazing soul. That's what I want people to know about him. Such a beautiful person that, imagine being blessed with that talent. How do you even make it through a world and keep your sanity? But he did.
That's incredible.
And,
did you keep in touch with him through the years?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we spoke about 3 months before he passed. You know, I had made a solo record, and I was like, I can't wait for you to hear it. And he was excited about Wolfie stuff. He wanted me to hear it, and I said, okay, great, so we'll get together. He said, because I'd called him because, you know, there was rumors flying around that seemed to be getting a little more credible than others. And I said, are you okay? Just tell me you're okay.
Yeah.
And he said, that's like, I'm okay. I'm fine. He goes, I'll send you some pictures right now. And he texted me some pictures of him and Wolfie at the Tool show. He said, do I look sick? I go, you do not look sick.
Right.
He said, this fucker's been chasing me 20 years. It ain't going to get me now. He sounded great. And he said, I'm going to go have a little procedure. And then when I get back, I'll call you. You come over, you play him your solo record, and I'll play Wolfie stuff.
Nice.
And the next call I got was that he had passed. So
wow. And did you keep in touch with Val through the years?
I did call her when Ed passed. We haven't spoken. There was a big chunk of time where we just lost touch.
Right.
Because, you know, that was a situation where she kind of removed herself from any of that camp. Understandably so.
Of course.
It's a relationship I hope to get back going again.
And in terms of Jennifer, what happened with Jennifer?
Jen was my best friend.
Uh-huh.
And she moved to New York. Timelines are so weird with me because I'm old, but I'd say 10, 15 years ago. And that kind of just did it. I'm good about keeping in touch. I'll just say it. She's not.
Okay.
So I just kind of got tired of trying to keep in touch. It's a shame. You just end up losing touch with a human when they live in a different state.
Yeah, it is sad. Now, you have a solo career going now, and you go under the name Kelly McLeod, which is your married name. So it's not Breznik, so everybody knows that that's you. And you have a latest album, which is Wide Open. Tell us about Wide Open, and what's the direction you're headed in with this?
Wide Open is the record I've been wanting to make, I think, since I came out of the womb, not even realizing if I was going to make it. It's my life. As a matter of fact, I have someone that's talking to me about doing a musical because it talks about start to finish with what I went through with my career as a young girl, wanted to be a rock star, moving to California. It also speaks from someone that has turned 50 and looks at the world a little different and is tired of being afraid, you know, and I wrote about stuff I've always been scared to write about. Some of it's in code, but at least I wrote it. Okay.
Right. Sure.
Even though I wasn't blatant. I'm so proud of it. Great producer, Phil Swan, who's a buddy of mine, and we went to Nashville, recorded it in 10 days. I had amazing players. Dan Dugmore, Linda Ronstadt's guitar player, the guy that blew by you. He had the little rig he played. It's like these people you meet that are so unassuming. We walk in the studio and I go, what's that? And he goes, that right there? I play Blue Bayou on that. I'm like, okay, can I get on my knee? What? You know? So they just knocked that record out after only hearing it a few times. And I couldn't be more proud of it.
And you lean more country with this. How did that come about?
Well, I was in a band called the Sweet Potatoes for 10 years. After that was the first time I had children. And once they were raised enough, they were baked enough where I could leave and go on tour. I joined a group called the Sweet Potatoes, and it was Americana.
Okay.
So some of my roots just started boiling up in me again. But the record I made was kind of the Americana thing mixed with the rock thing, you know, which is funny enough who I am musically. I'm both.
Okay.
I like Johnny Cash. I like Dolly Parton.
Right.
But I like freaking, you know, Van Halen.
I have to ask, and I know Dave's going to kill me, but I have to ask, Dave or Sam?
I knew you were going to ask me that. And guess what? I can't
All
give
the
you
above.
an answer.
Come on, you got to commit. Come on.
And I cannot. And I'm telling you, it was Dave. You don't replace Dave. You got to get a new name. You got to get a new And when I heard the stuff, I'm like, oh, my God, this might actually work. And after touring with them, those songs, oh, my God, you know, who can do that? They did it. I love them both. I love Sam as a person, too, by the way.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Did Ed play you a lot of the stuff that they were recording before they were released and asked you for your opinion on it?
He didn't ask for my opinion, no. He would play me a few things, but I think it was mainly for just him to see how it would feel playing it for someone. I was a good guinea pig to just go out and play it, see what it feels like.
Any particular road stories you could share from the OU812 tour that were
Plenty
fun?
of them, but I'm not going to share them.
Well, can you? All right, can you give me
Do you
one?
have any
can
rated
you-
PG-13?
Like
You
a-
gotta pay me lots of money. No, I'm kidding. There's many things that will go to my grave, and that's all there is to it.
There's
But
not even a
I'll
fun
just
one you can
say
tell
this.
that's harmless.
Oh God, not really. They're all pretty harmful.
Oh wow, okay.
Meaning, I got to consider other people. It's
Okay.
not just me involved.
Right.
But let me tell you this: we had fun.
I can
We
imagine.
had fun. I thank God every day that I'm still alive. We were fearless, completely fearless.
Now, when you gig out solo, do you play Private Life songs?
You know, people have been asking me to. I never have. I didn't with the Sweet Potatoes either because we were going to maybe like country one of them up, put a little Americana kick to it, and we never
Right.
did. But I want to do that.
That would be
I
cool.
do want to do that.
I think it's a good idea. You should think about it because, those songs are just sitting there and, that's your voice and they're mostly identified with your voice. So I think that would make sense. And let me ask you, looking back and now that you're older and you're wiser, if you had a chance to do it over again, what would you change?
Ah, that's such a good question. Part of me wants to say that I would have spoken up and said, hey, nobody knows who we are. What can we do? What can I do to help this be promoted? But the other part of me, which knows what an incredible life I led, which includes having 2 children and being alive, I don't know that had we had more success, that might not have been the right path for me personally. I think.
Okay.
So I might not want to do that. So maybe it's good I can't go back and change it.
Is there one song that you're most proud of from the whole Private Lifetime?
I would say Last Heartbeat.
So Ed was right on with that.
Yeah, that was a biggie. And I also like Holiday. Those are my 2 that I thought I could just picture those 2 doing more. And I'm actually in the works to do some licensing stuff because it'd be great to have those songs. Actually, Touch Me is in Wayne's World. I'm sure you've seen Wayne's World.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Yeah.
So when Tia Carrere has the snake around her neck,
Yep.
she's in the club. If you ever happen to watch it again, that's
Yeah.
Touch Me. And she's singing on it because she wanted to be the one singing.
Nice.
And they were like, can we put her voice on it? And I go, well, you going to pay me? Yeah. But yeah, let her sing it all day long.
That's great. So now, in terms of Ed's passing, you spoke with him on the phone, and then the next thing you hear that he's passed. Was it an absolute shock to you, or were you aware of his level of illness?
It was gut-wrenching. I was not, because he convinced me, as only Ed can.
Right.
He convinced me because he didn't want to worry me.
Yeah.
Which, again, I would have said more things. There's so many things I would have said to him or whatever. But that's the way he wanted it. He didn't want me to be worried. So I stopped paying attention to the rumors once I talked to him that night when he said, do you think do I look sick? Yeah. I immediately stopped listening. So when I got the call, I folded. It's still just, I miss him. you
Yeah.
know? I miss him. And the world lost a really beautiful person.
Sure. And did you hear Wolf's album?
Yes. Oh my God. So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
He kept telling me how great his voice was. I'm thinking, wait, he's got to be a great guitar player. What? And he is. But
Yeah.
it's like the guy can sing.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. The kid plays guitar, bass, drums, sings, keyboards. It's beyond.
He got daddy's blood. He's got daddy's blood.
Well, I
That's
tell you,
good.
Ed used to say, and no one believed him, like, this kid's better than me. And everybody's like, what are
I
you
know.
talking about? What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean he's
I
better
know.
than you? And he said, no, I'm telling you. He said, this kid's dangerous. This kid's scary. Ed, obviously, he played keyboards, but Ed could play drums and play bass as well. I think that he meant that he has a much more, I guess, all-around virtuosity in the sense that, he can play and write and sing and, everything. I think he was so taken, not only because it's his kid, but because, like, wow, you're not just, like, really good. You're, like, fucking amazing. So, like, I think that was, I think even he was a little taken back, like, oh, my God. Like, I knew you would be good, but I didn't think you'd be this motherfucking good. You know,
I thought you'd be like you'd know how to play.
Yeah, like he would certainly be great, but I think everybody's a little like, wow, like he's really fucking throwing down. And I don't know if you've heard A Different Kind of Truth, which is the last studio album Ed made, and if you haven't, definitely pick it up and check it out.
Just bits, but I will. I'll listen again.
Wolf really put a lot of work into that album in terms of production, in terms of background harmonies, and he was sort of the dark horse of that album, kind of keeping that band going and together and, motivating them. And the whole reason Van Halen got back together in 2007 with Dave, and then that last run from 2007 all the way up into 2015, and they did, the 3 tours and the 2 albums, 1 live, 1 studio. That was all started and created and motivated by Wolf. And he was literally a kid. Dave and I always call him a kid because we're in our 50s, but he's 30 years old. He's an adult now, but back then he literally was a kid. Like he was going to school in between Van Halen tours.
I think Ed was willing to put aside, because, you guys know, without me saying what the tensions were there, when that as that.
Yep.
But he was willing to put all that aside because look what they got. I mean, what magic him and Wolf playing together like that.
I think he was
so happy. Ed was so happy then.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So,
Valerie said it in her new book. She never saw him as happy as he was when he was between his brother and his son on stage playing. Like, that was absolute euphoria for him.
She's absolutely right.
So at least have some comfort in, number one, he did get to achieve that in addition to obviously his whole career, and he did get to hear Wolf's album.
He got to see what he created, and that's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. It's huge. And he knew what he was leaving behind was in good hands, and I think he felt comfortable with that. So it's still tragic. So tragic that he died at 65 years old.
But there are great things. You're right. You're very right. And he and Valerie were in such a good place, too. So
that's true.
That makes me very happy, too.
It is true. It is true. Well, listen, Kelly, I want to thank you so much for your time. I want everybody to go check out your solo album, Wide Open,
yes,
please. That's on Spotify.
Kelly McLeod Music.
Absolutely. Check it out, Wide Open for sure. And also check out the Private Life albums. Now, just out of curiosity, why did you name the second one self-titled? Why wasn't the first one self-titled? What made you self-title the second Private Life album?
Because we're goofballs.
Okay.
That's all.
That's it, huh?
That's all.
Okay.
Throwing nickels in beers one night. Let's do it.
I sell smiles for a living. You're half one free. That looks good on you. That's what makes me happy. Have another. Wear it for breakfast.
Martin Popoff here. Hope you're enjoying this latest episode of Dave and Dave Unchained, the Wise Swamis on All Things VH. Just wanted to remind you that at martinpopoff.com, I've got 2 Van Halen books that I wrote. One is Van Halen, a visual biography, which is basically a big hardcover coffee table book, 400 images, 20,000 word detailed timeline. And the other one is called Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. It's the sort of 120,000 word, very academic, a lot of crazy chapters, a lot of trivia, wordy book that I did on Van Halen. So yes, go to martinpopoff.com. I sign and ship those out of my office here in Toronto. There's PayPal buttons for the US, international, and Canada. Again, Van Halen, a visual biography, and Unchained, a Van Halen user manual. Back to Dave and Dave.
Hello, loyal listeners. Wanted to let you know about our new Patreon. If you like what we do and you have the means, drop us a donation to keep the podcast going. Go to patreon.com/DD Unchained. That's patreon.com/DDUNCHAINED. Any size contributions are greatly appreciated. We have special packages to those who donate $45 or more. You'll get the Unchained package. Trust me, it's worth it. Contribute $65 or more and you can get the Romeo Delight package, which is Unchained plus more. $95 or more scores you the Top Jimmy package, which is the kitchen sink.
If you're a Van Halen hardcore and listen to this cast, this is stuff you'll appreciate. It's ear candy. Those who want one of the packages, simply email ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com. That's ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com to make arrangements. What is understood need not be discussed.
Hello, this is guitar player Steve Hunter, and you are listening to Dave and Dave Unchained.
Hey folks, I'd like to introduce you to the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast. Welcome to the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast, where no stone is left unturned in the show's epic quest to review and dissect every single rock album ever made. Join self-proclaimed rock authorities Chris Carson and Lee Bowie on their epic journey to uncover the true classics. You can find the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast wherever podcasts can be found, including Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Our website address is classicrockalbumbyalbum.libsyn.com. That's LIBSYN.com. And we can be reached on Facebook at fb.me/Classic Rock Album by Album. See you soon from the Classic Rock Album by Album podcast.
Check out the new podcast, The Rock Quarry, your place to hear in-depth interviews with some of rock's most colorful characters, with your host, entertainment journalist David J. Criblay. The Rock Quarry is available for free on Spreaker and iTunes. You can check us out on Facebook at The Rock Quarry Podcast, on Twitter at Rock Quarry Pod, on Instagram at The Rock Quarry Podcast, or email us at therockquarrypodcast@gmail.com.
People tell me, Dave, was it fun making the record? Dave, are you happy with the record? Dave, is it still fun to go on the road? It was never fun. I'm never happy.
Really?
I'm only happy when I'm miserable. I'm one of those people, I'm not happy unless I'm stressed, overworked, too many deadlines, gotta be here, gotta be there, gotta be both places, kid. Hey, come on, the world is run by people who never feel well.
Hello, is that David?
Yes. GE, how are ya? Excellent to talk to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Longtime fan of yours. I grew up watching you on SNL and with Hall & Oates.
Yeah, there we were.
I always wanted to ask you, I always enjoyed the instrumental you played with Eddie Van Halen back in, I guess it was 87, Stompin' at the Savoy?
I think, yeah.
How did that come about, and did you guys write that tune together?
Eddie at the time was married to Valerie Bertinelli, if you remember. And Valerie was the host of Saturday Night Live that week. And Eddie came along with her, but he wasn't going to be on the show. You know, he didn't really have much to do. He was just hanging around. So he would come up to my office on the 17th floor there at NBC and just hang out. Because you could smoke in my office. I didn't mind if people smoked. And there I had guitars there. So he'd just sit there and smoke his cigarettes and play, you know. And so we started talking, hey, man, you know, you should do a song with the band. And he had part of a song all ready to go. And then I filled in some other parts, and we did it. And, boy, we had a ball. What a guitar player.
Oh, yeah. Incredible. And that was such a unique moment for the show, too, to give kind of an instrumental play there and let both of you really go off. It was such a fun moment. Did you guys ever consider recording it?
No, we did that, and that was kind of it. I started on Saturday Night Live in 1985, and after a couple of years, the show was doing really well, so they started featuring the band a little, and I asked Lauren Michaels, I said, would it be okay if when there's a good guitar player in town, if I invite him to come and play with the band, we won't announce it or anything, you know, we won't put it in TV Guide at the time, you know. The camera will come up and there will be Eddie Van Halen, Johnny Winter, Buddy Guy, David Gilmour. So we did that, and that was a real fun part of the show for me. And a cool thing was that I heard from people in bands, like Kirk Hammett from Metallica told me one time, he said, yeah, we always used to watch to see who you were going to have on with you.
Right,
you know?
right.
Yeah.
That was a really That was a really fun moment, man. That's great.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's G.E. Smith and the Saturday Night Live Band with my best friend, Eddie Van Halen.
Live all day, all night. You know what you need, only right here on Dave TV.
Check us out on Facebook at Dave and Dave Unchained, a Van Halen podcast, on Twitter at DD Unchained, on Instagram at DD Unchained Podcast, and you can email us at ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com.
All right, is this Dave's actually whorehouse?
This is Dave's whorehouse. Yep, absolutely, at your service.
All right, I thought I had the right number.